Hello!
Ding dong merrily on high.
Hello, if you can see us, if you can hear us, please do. No, don't go over the people. Don't go over the people. Hopefully everyone's doing well today. Hello. It's lovely to see you all. Hopefully it's working and you can actually see and hear us because okay, good. I'm starting to see some responses. Are we late? No, it's still 3 o'clock. No,
I think you'll find that we arrived precisely when we meant to.
Oh yeah, sure. We'll use that as a shield.
A dwarf is never late. A dwarf is always on time. Just because you happen to reckon time differently to me,
But hopefully everyone's doing well out there. We are inching closer and closer to the holidays. I hope you've gotten started on your Christmas shopping. If not, you're getting perilously close to panic territory for everyone out there. So beware. This is your warning.
yeah, this guy hasn't done his shopping because this guy has a lot currently on his mind. I've got 3 games I'm halfway through designing, which is a lot of fun. One of them is literally the dog's bollocks. That's all I'm saying. I'm so happy with it.
You might add just a little more to that, just in case there's people somewhere in the world that go, is that good or bad?
Go use Google. You'll find out quickly that the dog's bollocks is awesome. And I'm really pleased with it. It completely checks all of my boxes. It's the sort of thing that makes me super happy. But beyond that, everything's just kind of brilliant. I mean, what else could you look for on a nice streaming Tuesday?
That's good. So it is Tuesday.
My bum.
So we are doing, you know, it's one of those streams that's kind of a little more chill, a little more chaotic. Today we're coming back to the tier list. We try not to do these too often, but especially because
So I'm just laughing at one of the comments that came in.
But when we were coming up to a new tier list, someone had, I don't remember who it was, but someone was like, oh, do Dwarf Halls. I was like, oh yeah, Dwarf Halls, that's super easy, we can do that. But then I sat down to make the list, and as I started making the list, it kept getting longer and longer, and I was like, uh-oh, we have to do this in 3 hours. So some decisions had to be made. Some holds had to be sent missives that they were not being invited to the King's Moot, and I'm sure they're very upset and have already written my name to the Book of Grudges. And the next time that we have a airing of grudges, I'm going to be catching a whole lot of spit in my face for all the holes that we had to cut. So we narrowed it down to what I think is a pretty good list. We got the big boy holds.
Pretty much.
We got all of the really famous ones from especially the main Karaz Ankor, which is, for those that don't know, kind of the World's Edge Mountains, mountain range. And then we grabbed a handful, usually about one from each of the surrounding mountain ranges. So the Black Mountains, the Gray Mountains, the Middle Mountains, etc. Not the Middle Mountains, the Black Mountains, the Gray Mountains, and the Vaults. There we go. And so it's a decent list, and we're also not including, with one sort of exception that we'll get into, we're not including any fallen holds. So if your hold has...
We'll be here forever.
Yeah, if your hold has been sacked or teleported into the realm of chaos or eaten by beastmen or sacked by greenskins, you're out. You don't get to participate in this here party.
Quite right too, because as was mentioned in Lawhammer, because I like referencing Lawhammer at least once per stream. Get that in your bingo card. As was mentioned in Lawhammer, just last episode, bajillions of full holds have fallen. Loads of them, far more than is recorded in most annals. So for us to go through all the fallen holds would be probably a tier list stream all by itself, and it would be a long one because a lot of holds have fallen. The dwarves are not in a good place, like at all. The dwarves, in comparison to where they once were back at the end of the Cataclysm in their first major golden age, in comparison to where they are now, is a little bit like comparing the population of, I don't know, humanity with the population of insects. Originally, they were insects, and now they're just a few billion left. And I say billion purely because even though most of the whole population numbers say, there's 3,000 there and 5,000 there, nevertheless, they somehow managed to field armies, including tens of thousands, because that's Warhammer for you.
Yeah, really. Never trust GW with numbers. That never works out well. So we'll go ahead and bring up the list. So here is today's list. We have Barak Var, Karak Asgraz, Karak Azul, Karak Eight Peaks, Karak Hirn, Karak Izor, Karak Kadrin, a lot of Karaks, Karak Norn, Karak Zorn, Karazakarak, Krakadrak, and Zufbar.
Fucking awesome. 12. Now, if we go by our standard rate, we'll be done Barak Var by approximately, 2 hours into the stream, meaning that we'll somehow have to get the further 11 in the last hour. We're going to try and be a bit more moderate this time. We're going to move at a nice, relatively quick pace, but at the same time, have enough time with each to make sure that you feel like you understand them.
Yeah, so yeah, we're going to try and not do what we have done every single time we do a tier list, which is get ourselves into a bit of trouble. But before we do that, just to catch up on a few things, hopefully everyone's doing well. Just want to take a moment to thank everyone so much for all their support for everything Lorebeards has been up to. We just had the first official book club this past Sunday with Vera and Lindsay, and they killed it. It was an awesome episode, and I'm really, really pleased with how it turned out.
Do we have the pull up for the next one?
No. I am going to put that up this evening.
How about when we do the first one, I will start working on the poll in the background very slowly.
Yeah, because that's right.
It'd be really good if we had that go live.
Yeah, so we had a bit of debate about whether to do Guardians of the Forest as the elf book.
Because you're all watching live, and I'm going to be doing this live, tapping away in the background rather quietly with my mute button on, we have a question for you. In Lorebeards Book Club, which was great, and you should go watch it, there was a question raised concerning which books should be in the next book club, and a poll was organized. But they organized 2 books by the same author, Graham McNeil. Now, I love Graham. In fact, I literally love him. He's a great guy. Graham's awesome. Yep. Okay, literally brilliant. And I'm not averse to having 2 of his books in book club, but it would be nice to have a little bit of diversity in there. So if you have got an alternate suggestion to either, it was Guardians of the Forest and Ambassador Chronicles book 1, I think was the options. Is that correct? Yes. So if you have an alternative option, then please drop it into the comments and we will consider, or I will consider it as I'm putting it all up there.
The first Malice Darkblade book.
Malice Darkblade, there's a good example already. So if you've got some ideas, drop that in. And poor old Vera and Lindsay will get a nice little shock when they find out that some random ass book has been added onto their list. Now, fortunately, Lindsay is indeed currently in the comments. Hi, Lindsay. Obviously, she won't be surprised, but Vera might be.
You could do the first Orion book. Orion has a very nice trilogy.
Yeah.
I do think Guardians of the Forest should be the one replaced. I like. Yeah,
so do I, because Ambassador Chronicles was chosen first in the stream, so that was the one that chronologically got in first.
Honestly,
so it feels like.
Honestly, Malice Darkblade could be that could be a good one, because that's kind of like a nice, like, long episodic series that has a lot of history to it as well. Anyway,
everyone else got some ideas while you're out there? Go post them in the comment, because there's almost certainly something else we could do.
Yeah,
Feel free to suggest it.
Yeah, we could run like a mini poll here to like.
We could do a poll live while we're here. Oh, I love that idea. And we'll do a live poll, which means we need 4 books, that we can pop up as a poll while we're doing this. I know. I'm just bringing out this comment now. Fuck you. That's all I'm saying.
That was one of the best streams where Andy's brain was just. So to add context to this, there's a Lorehammer episode where Andy just refuses to call Barak Var by Barak Var. He keeps calling it Zufbar,
like multiple times.
Like everyone's like, you mean Barak Var? He's like, oh yeah, and like the best part is it got to the point where Andy would say Zufbar and would be like, fuck, and like he would catch himself immediately. It was great. It was so funny.
What an idiot.
Lordy. Yeah, I've even fixed it now where Hawk can actually run polls on YouTube.
Sweet.
Yeah, we don't have to do it anymore. He can do it. Twitch, we are in the final stages of getting things set up. We're literally just filling out the last paperwork to become a, what do you call it?
Twitch friend. I can't remember
a Twitch
what it's called.
affiliate. That's the name for it. So yeah, cool, awesome. How? There's a plus button under the chat. And you now have the option to make a. You now have the ability to make a poll. I mean, I can still do it, but you can do it too. I tested it with Ross. It works now. It's all I fancied it. And anyway, so other quick thing I want to say. Tomorrow, we still need to put the lobby up. I'll be putting up a lot more, like the next week worth of lobbies tonight. But tomorrow for the 40K stream, I'm gonna snipe them a little bit here and give an announcement that I won't say what it is. I'm gonna let Ross and Alexis reveal it, but I will say that tomorrow we're gonna do something we've never done before on Lorebeards, which is that they're gonna be doing a giveaway during the stream. They're gonna give a nice little expensive thingy that I won't say what it is. You'll just have to show up to tomorrow's 40K stream and find out, and maybe you can even win it. You don't have it? You should have it though. Maybe I didn't put you the right tier. Whatever, it's fine. I'll do it myself. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to drop a word of warning. Awooga! Just had a message from Ross saying there might be a power outage with him tomorrow. He might not be able to make the stream tomorrow.
Oh, I literally read that and forgot. Maybe tomorrow.
Maybe tomorrow.
Maybe.
Gosh darn it. Oh, the gods, the fates. They love toying with us.
Yeah. Just want to give a heads up about that. That's right, because Ross might have some severe weather coming in.
Yeah,
so we will play that by ear. I do want to say though that whenever it is they choose to stream, if they have to reschedule, it'll be at the next 40K stream. So please just stay tuned to our socials and the Discord to be aware of that. Lorebeards Bathwater, we haven't quite reached that level of affiliation yet, chat. We're not quite there yet. I mean, me and Andy's Bathwater, sure, but like Ross's and Alexis's, y'all got to work your way up to that.
No, don't do it. just don't.
Yeah. So, man, is there a fourth like elf book? Oh wait, Orion. I remember now. Oh, that works out. Because that means there's a wood elf option, a high elf option, and a dark elf option, and then kind of a bonus option. Boom. Okay, there we go. There's a poll. I just threw up a poll about which elf book y'all should be the fourth option on the poll. The options that I came up with by checking the comments were Malice Darkblade, Tyrion and Teclis Book 1, Malice Darkblade Book 1, Tyrion and Teclis Book 1, Defenders of Ulthuan Book 1, or the Orion Trilogy Book 1. So check those out. Vote now. Thank you. Anyway, so while that's going, let's get caught up on super chats and stuff, and then we'll hop into it. Friend or trader, question. Does this list correlate to what holds are good for stomping, or is that another list? Someone shoot that man. That's clearly two goblins in a trench coat.
I'm going with friend. Hey, friendo, you're clearly a dwarf pal, and these are obviously the ones you shouldn't attack because they are the biggest examples of the holds. If you're looking to go for a weaker one, go for the ones we're not discussing today.
Super Orlock, thank you for the super chat and the cat face. Thank you. Baron Von Boot, thank you so much for becoming a member. Hey! Oh, that also reminds me. I am happy to announce that your membership finally does something, which is that if you are a member, whether you're the lore seeker rank or you're one of the big dick lord ranks, it now gives you a fancy new color over on the Discord. So make sure your Discord YouTube accounts are linked, and you'll stand out. You'll be all suave looking with your green color, showing how cool you are. So that's there for that. We'll have more news on that coming soon, but for right now, it just makes you look cool. which like that's all that matters in life, right?
It's for me.
Corn Achievement, how many holds are there? Will it be a short stream?
How cool am I?
Short, but no, it'll be a typical stream because me and Andy yap too much, and it's 12 holds for today.
It's 12 holds, and honestly, it won't be that long. I mean, that's what, 10 minutes per hold, and that does, of course, give us a full extra hour on top. So 10 minutes per hold plus an hour, that's bound to be fine.
We say is looking up and having wasted 15 minutes already.
We've still got 45 minutes worth of tummy rumbling. It'll be totally cool.
Sean Schultz, which Dawi hold is your favorite hold? Well, we can't answer that right now because that would skew the poll. So ask us
Sean,
this.
The holds, and indeed any of our tier lists, work something like this. We go yap, yap, yap. This is what this is. And we don't give our opinion. We then let you rate it, ranging from S, we think it's absolutely supertastically awesome, all the way down to often C or D, depending on what we've added to the list this week. And then after you've voted, we have a little discussion as to where we would place it. So, no is the answer. I'm not answering. You can't trick me. You can't do it.
I'll just pick a hold that's not on the list of oh my gosh, it just left my brain. Karak
Xander. First introduced by Steve Saville in the Vampire Chronicles.
Oh, mine was gonna be the Dragon Hold.
Why did you say this?
I know, right?
Now my face is gonna go red.
Asgal, Karak Asgal.
There we go, Karak Asgal. Bloody hell, there's an entire crap book about it.
I know, terrible book, but I love the hold.
Truly awful book, but I really like the hold.
It's actually a very, very fun hold. Which hold has the most fishmen? Why no Uzkalak? Because Uzkalak is a fallen hold, so it doesn't get to be on the list.
You're such a bad person, Biofoot, trying to, make us go, wait a minute, did we miss one? No, we're not doing fallen holds. And we're definitely not doing those underwater dwarf holds that no one talks about, the fish dwarf holds. I think that your absolute focus upon only the fishmen just shows your inherent bias against the fish dwarves. Why are you talking about the fish dwarves? People talk about the fish elves, but no one talks about the fish the fish dwarves. That's like a half dwarf, half elf. A dwarf.
Oh yeah, that won't get us in trouble at all. Lord Vorn, Warhammer 3, I always like to capture Mount Gunbad and then rename it to Kedak Bryn after its Brightstone mines. Yeah, whenever I play a dwarf or a greenskin campaign, I actually do like to rename settlements. Like changing it back to like dwarf names or coming up with a dwarf name for greenskins, changing it to a more orky name. That's always a good time. And then Biofoot, Elf book should be Biddlepop, Life and Times. You're right, it should have been. It's too bad that book is so rare. I mean, it's truly a collector's item. All right, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and call this poll, which everyone's had time to vote on. A good number of you voted, which we appreciate. And the winner is Malice Darkblade.
Oh, it's Malice. Oh, can't go wrong with some beardy elves.
Yeah, Malice, the totally original series, not at all deeply inspired.
Okay, so who's going to say it? I'm going to say it. If you've got your bingo cards, are you ready? Total rip-off of Michael Moorcock. Feel good for saying that.
All right.
Okay, Malice it is.
So from there, it is time for us to go ahead and get started. So our first hold that is going to be up on the chopping block today to be voted on by you, the lovely community, about where they should go on the tier list, which you'll notice that we do have an unusual amount of tiers today because we do have S, A, B, C, D as normal, but we also have the dreaded, deepest, darkest pit of tier options, which is Umgak, which as of yet cannot be reached by normal means. But there will be potentially other ways that it could be reached, which we'll discuss later. In any event, as we discuss about these holds, me and Andy will be sharing, some various thoughts, concepts, and ideas behind the various holds, histories, and all that stuff. But as for what criteria you might be basing it all on, ultimately, that's kind of up to you. You know, me and
Hmm.
Andy will make various discussions about why it might be a good hold in some ways and a bad hold in other ways. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's going to boil down to your own personal discretion, which is nice and also makes things confusing and likely to result in arguments, which is the way we love it around here. So, Barakvar, the gate to the sea. So Barakvar, as you might guess from that, its name translated, is the only naval hold in the entirety of the Dwarf Empire. The Karak,
The car, yeah.
yeah. But obviously there are others that we'll talk about later. But in the main,
And there's even others which we won't talk about because they're bad boys.
yes. But for the traditional glorious shining realm of the Dawi, the Barakvar is their only big naval port. And it's a big one. Barakvar was built into this giant, absolutely colossal sea cavern. So it's like this big open mouth of rock that is still a very, very thick amount. Like, we're not talking like it's like a little shelf of rock. No, this natural formation is titanic in scale. And it's a full dwarf hold, not only built into the rock that opens up like a big mouth of the land trying to devour part of the Black Gulf, but of course it goes very, very deep underground. And this hold is very unique in that a significant amount of it is, of course, exposed to the ocean air, because a lot of it is built around the port, where one of the things that's really unique about Barakvar, of course, is that they have tons and tons of ships. They have many different kinds of ships, the most famous of which, especially in more recent times, and by recent, I mean like the last several thousand years, are the ironclads, which are these great hulking metal ships that are able to float despite the fact they're made out of metal. What strange magical technology that we can't possibly fathom. And Barakvar also has an absolutely staggering amount of focus on engineering. While it's not considered the engineer's hold, that honor belongs to another one that's down the list. They do have a very, very notable and powerful engineers guild. During earlier eras of the Karaz, Ankor, and the Dwarf Empire, there were actually times that Barakvar was considered to be kind of preeminent, especially because they tended to be more open to bizarre ideas, because it's a hold that in many ways encourages unusual thinking, because so much of it revolves around naval concepts of being sailors and allowing other races to like dock at their port and open trading and doing a lot of things that other dwarfs find very strange. Can we have a map? Sure, I can pull up a map. But what makes Barakvar kind of fascinating in so many ways is that of all of the major dwarf holds that you tend to hear about, in many ways, it's one of the most unusual. Of that, it's so open to other races that come to visit and trade and, you know, deal with their merchants and everything. And just the fact that the dwarfs mess with the ocean at all. Many Dawi, kind of like when it comes to like flying or riding on creatures or all sorts of other concepts, there are a lot of ideas that the vast majority of dwarfs think is very alien or is very uncomfortable, and like should never be done or pursued by any dwarf that has his brain on straight. And getting on a boat is one of those things.
Polls up! Poll is up! Poll is up. Go vote now. Choose which one of those lovely books you would like book club to cover next. There we go. I can hopefully I'm not muted still, because if so, I'm just shouting
you are not muted.
my own room for no reason.
Nope.
Which would have been kind of funny. So on my side, while he's looking for a map, I have a few things to say about Barakvar. Barak Var originally made no sense at all. In the very first maps of Barak Var, it was placed in exactly the same location it was right now, but it wasn't on any mountains, any hills, any crags. It wasn't on anything, because back then dwarves did not only sight in mountains. Dwarves used to live in lots of places. They had entire fields, as much as that may sound ridiculous by modern standards. They had entire settlements that were just normal cities and normal towns. That changed. And when it came to detailing Barak Var inside Stone and Steel, it got a significant change because an entire mountain range was added to the border kingdoms, the border princes, called the Varenka Hills. And the Varenka Hills sit right beside Barak Var, that dwarf sea fortress you can see sitting in the very center of the map in front of you. Now, the Varenka Hills didn't exist before that point. They pretty much were nothing more than a little dot of it might be there, but if you take a look at the map inside the first Stone and Steel book, they make quite a big deal out of the Varenka Hills. This got carried over into the second edition of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay only because I argued for it, because they wanted to wipe them out because they weren't on any other map, and they were like, no, these things don't exist. Where did these hills even come from? And the answer was dwarves. They're dwarfs. Dwarfs, modern dwarfs don't live in cities, big ocean cities with massive iron ships coming out of them. They live in mountains with iron ships coming out of them. So we really need to ensure the Varenka Hills are still there. And that, fortunately, continued to be the case. So the Varenka Hills got kept over and are still there to this day. Loosely speaking, Barak Var can be very quickly summed up. It is one of the most forward-facing holds in the world. It is a center of trade for all of the border princes. And you might go, well, that's nothing. Border princes are rubbish. That's only because no one can be asked writing them. Whenever they are properly written about inside a novel, inside a computer game, there's thriving cities, there's thriving trade, and there's big princedoms down there that have been permanently there for hundreds of years. And then someone else comes along and says, there isn't any. Then the next person comes along and says, I'm making something that's been here for hundreds of years. It's a confusing place is what we're going to sum it up with. What we can say for certain is that Barak Var is at the very heart of those trade routes, and it carries a great deal of the trade that comes in for the East outwards into the rest of the old world. And that's both in terms of trade that comes up the Black Gulf and also trade that makes its way across the Darklands, through the Wolflands, past all those ogres and their kingdoms. I mean, can we really call them kingdoms? And all the way from Cathay or anywhere else. Barak Var is a center of trade and a center of maritime outreach for the dwarfs. Indeed, without Barak Var, there would be no maritime outreach for the dwarfs. They would be entirely landlocked and they would have no dwarf fleets, which would really upset everybody that likes playing dwarfs because they couldn't have cool iron steamships chugging around the Warhammer world. If you've ever seen one of those chugging around steamships, it's come from Barak Var. So if you like ships, vote for Barak Var. If you like holds that are featured in Gotrek and Felix novels, vote for Barak Var. We tend to find anything that's related to Gotrek and Felix tends to do quite well. But nevertheless, I don't know why, vote for Barak Var. But if you're looking for the most militaristic or the strongest holds, it's not that. It's been attacked again and again and again, and almost certainly has fallen several times and been reclaimed. It's one of those holds that's at the very center of many an orc attack route, and I do mean a lot of them. The orcs often come from the Badlands, down from the south, and they just swarm through, meaning the dwarves just go down and let their city be crushed, and then they come back into their hold and repopulate it again, because there's almost nothing else they can do. The Badlands have moved through this area multiple times, and Barak Var, well, it didn't exactly fall. I mean, it's still there, but it didn't exactly hold either. It's one of those ones where it's a little bit like the tide, the ocean. Strangely enough, the metaphor extends where the tide comes in and they get swallowed up by the big wash of orcs, but the tide always goes back out again. And as they do so, burrowing up out of the sand, there's all the little creatures that live there going, we're okay. In this case, the dwarfs. So Barak Var is in a dangerous location out by itself and is one of the richest holds because of that.
Yeah, and they like Andy said, they have had very good times. They've also had very bad times. They have had times where they've been at the forefront of a lot of the technological marvels, much to the grumbling of the Engineers Guild of the other holds, who think that they're being too frivolous and too advanced and moving too quickly. They were one of the first holds to really accept flying technology, because to them it wasn't that strange of an idea when they were already going out on boats, which is also looked very frowned upon. However, this has bitten them in the ass a few times. They were notably a hold that attempted to, and successfully I might add, make a refined version of warpstone powder during the War of Vengeance, if you follow that particular storyline in the novels, which was a very good storyline. But then, due to the shenanigans of a unfortunate agent of the Great Enemy, it exploded, and the hold was nearly leveled. Bargvar has kicked out a lot of individuals that have gone on to become rather ruthless pirates. There have been some who are more noble than others. And it has an up and down history. It's been blockaded a surprising number of times, very successfully, because when they get surrounded, numbers becomes a problem, and they're in a gulf, so it's difficult for aid to reach them unless it's a particularly large fleet. So they've had to be saved a few times by high elves or humans, which is a little embarrassing.
A standing embarrassment.
Yes.
If you're a Dwarf fan, this is not the hold to vote for, because they're constantly coming up with newfangled nonsense that none of the other dwarves particularly like, trying out new stuff, and then having to get help from people like Elgi just to survive. It is the embarrassment, but in many respects, that also speaks to the character of the dwarves that are there. They're different to the other dwarves in the Ankor. They're much more forward-facing. They're much more likely to ally with others. They're a much more personable group than the other dwarves. Having said that, though, that's a little bit like saying that stone's a lot harder than that stone. Yeah, sure, but they're still hard stones, aren't they? Mm-hmm. Yes, they are. They absolutely are. It's not that they're not dwarfs. Far from it. They are fine examples of dwarfs. It's just that they also do things that other dwarfs who consider themselves significantly more dwarfy would never do. So if you like rebels, vote for Barrack-Var. If you don't like rebels and think they should be curtailed, gosh darn it, by Grungni, we should be dealing with our problems properly, not by building some great cannon device that floats on water. I mean, how does it even keep going? This is just nonsense. What you need to be is down a good tunnel. That's what you should be, not out on the high seas, or perish the thought, underwater? If anything, that would just make everyone shorter. You're going down. So, long story short, it's a funny old place, and I quite like Barrack-Var. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I think that's enough said for us to go ahead and hop into our first poll. I think for Barrack-Var, I think SAPC is a pretty fair starting place.
I think so. I'd say that's a really good fair one. Also, while that's getting popped up, let's say that the poll is up. I've not checked the poll yet. I've still got the page where I posted it, so I'm not sure which one's ahead or which one's behind. But I'm going to put on my own little personal notes here while you're all watching this, so you've got something else you can go vote for. First, we've got Lords of the Lance by Graham McNeil. That's our Bretonian novel from the old world, and it's the newest of all the books that we've got on the list. So if you want to see one of the newer stories from a fine author, that's the one to vote for. Next is Drachenfels by Jack Yeovil, who's actually Kim Newman. Jack Yeovil's a pen name. Kim Newman is the original author and has done many a novel all over the place. This is an old novel. We're going back to Oldhammer, much like we got with the Gotrek and Felix first one. And it is the novel that introduced an entire generation to the Warhammer world, far more so than Gotrek and Felix did. It was a far more influential book than Gotrek and Felix back in the day. And it's also a damn fine little mystery. So Drachenfels is a lot of fun. You might enjoy that one. It also introduces one of the most powerful characters that Warhammer will ever have. Drachenfels, the named character, who later on even has mentioned in the end times, but we can worry about those things later. Now, third on the list is Skarsnik, which, let's just put, I mean, it's by Guy Haley. We know it's going to be good. The Skarsnik novel, which is the one I'm imagining is going to win ahead of time because I know what everybody's like. I also called it Gotrek.
It is a very good book.
It's a great book. And if you've not read books from the perspective of Greenskins, you're going to enjoy this one a lot. Do recommend it. It's a lot of fun. And then finally, we have The Demon's Curse by Lee and Abnett. Less Abnett, more Lee. Mike Lee. Dan Abnett's name is one of those lovely attached ones because it sells more books. And in this particular case, we are dealing with, strangely enough, Malice Darkblade himself. In the first one, The Demon's Curse. In his story, we find out about the demon that he is cursed by, and it definitely has no relation at all to Michael Moorcock's books. So definitely with those four online, I've read them all, and I think they are all individually quite damn fine books, actually. I have a favorite of them. I don't want to color your preferences, but my favorite is Colored in Turn, because as is often the case, and indeed, to quote Michael Moorcock, Michael Moorcock has a set of books called the Eternal Champion books, and the Eternal Champion is basically the same soul going from character to character to character, arriving in the different spheres, the million spheres, which is his great, massive universe that he plays in, the multiverse. He was the first person to coin the term multiverse. Say thanks, Marvel. He mentioned that everybody had their own favorite Eternal Champions, which one they liked, Elric of Melniboné or Dorian Hawkmoon or whomever else it might be, Jerry Cornelius. And it was always the first one that they read. So whichever one they read first ended up being their favorite because it's the one that tapped on their nostalgia buttons. Mm-hmm. And in some respects, that's my favorite out of these four because Drachenfels I've read like 12 times, maybe more. And it is by almost default my favorite. Is it the one that I enjoyed most reading? Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's the best book for you to choose. I really enjoyed all of these for very different reasons, although I will take the piss out of one of these almost endlessly. So it's up to you what you choose. Book club will be decided. I think we're probably going to leave this one up for a good couple of days. Okay, mm-hmm. So it's not going to be up for very long. So you've only got a couple of days to get your vote in because that gives everybody time to then go get a hold of a copy and start reading it for the book club next month.
Yep. With that, I'm going to give y'all just a little bit longer to get your votes in. I'll grab some super chats actually to call up all those.
Good move.
Also, of course, as is a time-honored tradition on Lorebeards poll or tier list, we always allow for the Dwarf Merchants Guild or the rich kings and princes to be able to come in and say, no, this vote's all wrong, and wield their weighty wallets to move people around. Because this isn't the Chaos God stream, we'll make it not quite as crazy. The Dwarves Merchants Guild has contacted me and said that they will accept $50 for taking any hold that has been voted on already and shunting it to a layer of your choice.
There's going to be a grudging if any of these move.
It will not prevent you from being put in any books of grudges, though. Please do take that as a fair warning.
Oh dear, be very careful.
Solano, any fun Dawi holidays? Elgi laboring away at toys? The dwarves do have holidays.
Yeah, a whole bunch of festival days. In fact, the imperial calendar that we have. So that's the calendar we've discussed in a couple of streams before, where there's 12 months in the year, a year of 400 days, and a bunch of intercalary days. So that's special days that lie between the months. So if it was in the real world, you go January, February, March, special day, then April, and you move on. The dwarves gave that calendar to the Empire. So the 4 intercalary days that the dwarves celebrated got ported straight over into the Empire. So the Empire's entire idea of festivals, many of which are based on beer and sausage, a lot of that came from the dwarves. So do they have fun Dwawi holidays? Yeah, freaking tons of them. They've got days to celebrate each of their gods. They've got days to celebrate each of their different clans. They've got days to celebrate each of their different primary guilds. They've got days to celebrate their king. They've got days to celebrate the queen. They've got days to celebrate quite literally everything. Dwarves like to have a drink, like to get around a table and tell a big tall tale about the last time they killed 49 orcs all by themselves, because dwarves, for all they say they are the great masters of always telling the truth, are constantly lying. And this was something that came up inside our last episode of Lorebeards Book Club. So make sure you watch that if you haven't done so already, because there was a lot of really cool factoids dropped in there. But this one in particular, I think, is a good one. So the answer to this one is yes. There's just loads of them, and as many, if not more, than you probably expect.
Contract the Grafted, which hold has the most conflict with the Chorfs? So this is kind of one of those things that hopefully will get expanded in the old world if we ever get Chaos Dwarfs for it, which rumors abound that we will, but we'll see what happens. Because since they weren't a main playable army for the last like 3 editions of the game, Games Workshop kind of just pretended like they didn't exist.
As do the dwarfs. So they don't. And as it stands, and until they change this, which they inevitably will, because everybody likes to have their primary factions fighting and grudging each other. But until they do that, we're stuck with the lore as it stands. And lore as it stands is they ignore them. They don't exist. They are a non-entity. They absolutely are not dwarfs. They're nothing to do with them. They are over there doing whatever they're doing and occasionally raiding merchant trains and making their way up through those trains, that is, up through the mountains, and the dwarves hear about it. And they're like, we were attacked by chaos dwarves, or whatever they decide to call them. And they're like, well, what? No idea what you're talking about. Absolute nonsense. You're speaking nonsense. We won't let you spread those lies. Spread those lies, you don't get through our pass. Okay. I'd like to get through the pass. Well, who were you attacked by? Goblins? That's it. Well done. You were attacked by goblins. Greenskins. Well done. You can come through. Oh, but before you do, tall. They kind of don't.
The only story we have about them fighting is Gotrek and Felix, the Road of Skulls, which features a big Chaos Dwarf contingent attacking Katakadrin alongside a Chaos Host. And that's the most we get. Where they definitely, Josh Reynolds definitely lays down a lot of the lines of like, oh yeah, this, like, they have fought several times, but doesn't get too much into it from there. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up this poll, and we'll get to the rest of those super chats in a little while. And the winner is...
I need to get the poll open at this side as well so I can see as it goes. I like seeing the polls.
A tier for us.
Interesting. So what do you think of A tier then, Mr. Ryan?
So, I mean, I think for having no competition to go up against at the very start, and just kind of based on like an initial kind of looking around, tasting the air, getting the feel of things, I think A tier is fair for Barak Var. Personally, I think I would consider putting it down in high B as opposed to A personally, because I do think Barak Var has some pretty important failings as far as how I think it'd rate my dwarf holds. But
interesting.
That is simply this man's opinion.
Interesting. So where do I place Barak Var? Oh, this is a toughie. So there's different ways we can rate. If we're rating them for dwarfiness, they're an easy C. Easy C. They're just not dwarfy in the way that the other holds are. But if we're rating them for what the future of the dwarves require, they're an easy S. And I mean easy S. The dwarves are heading to extinction. An absolute, definite extinction. The only reason that they weren't wiped out 2,500 years ago is because of Sigmar. Again, primary plot point of current Lawhammer. And what the dwarves did was they effectively went, help! And they only survived because of humans. The only reason they survived. And then that leads us to, well, how have they fared since then? And the answer is badly. They haven't done well. The dwarves have been heading toward extinction for a very long time. And the only thing that's going to allow them to survive if the Warhammer world didn't blow up would be reaching out, making allies, being friends, trading with others, and putting to bed the ridiculous Elgi nonsense that obsesses 3/4, if not 90% of their species. They have turned their backs on some of the best allies they have in the world, and that largely makes them responsible for the destruction of the world. Barak Var stands contrary to that. Barak Var is a hold where the dwarves trade, speak to other species, and work with them. It also is a place where you get some really strange dwarfs, whether that's your pirate dwarves, which is way outside the dwarf character. A lot of the aeronauts come from here. A lot of the various ship-going crazy dwarfs come from here. And they are just different to many of the other dwarves elsewhere. Now, we pitched in a previous stream of Lorebeards about how the character of perhaps the Norse dwarves could be different to the Karak Ankor. And in many respects, Barak Var is the only example of a character of dwarves that somewhat matches what we suggested might be the case up with the Norse dwarves. Down here, if we're looking at the future of the dwarves and their hope, they're an easy S. If we're looking at them for being dwarfy, they're an easy C, which does suggest A or B. I mean, they're right in the middle. And it depends on how you're rating them. The question that I'm going to end with is, how do I rate them? And I rate them for what their overall contribution could be to the dwarven kingdoms. Can they be of more or less benefit? And the answer is, they're essential. They're an easy S. And anyone not putting them at S doesn't want the dwarfs to change. They want the dwarves to be grudge-ridden hate machines that do nothing but despise everybody else and put their hand up and say, we're right and you're wrong. Where Barak Var says, no, other people have opinions too. I mean, they're wrong, but they have opinions too, and we're willing to listen to them so we can understand why they're wrong. It's a subtle difference, but it's an important one, particularly when you go back to what the dwarves were like before the Great War of Vengeance, where they were a far more outward-looking species. The big fallout with the elves completely changed their character and almost wiped them out from the face of the Warhammer world because they just battened down the hatches and hid while the orcs and the greenskins et al. Romped over them. Barak Var stands as a hold that could change that. And I like that, so I'm going to make my version an S. Because I like to start with controversy.
There you go. Typical Andy. Typical Andy.
Anything you say, I'll say the opposite. Karaz a Karak. Omgihold.
Oh my God, we're going to get shot. But yeah, all right. So that's our first poll done there. I did see someone earlier ask, and I will answer of that. If your goal is to lock in a dwarf hold to a particular place, so like if it's in a tier you already want it to be in, yeah, you can spend the $50 to give it like a $50 shield. So someone would have to spend $100 to move it. If that's something you're so inclined to do, then that yes, you can raise the ramparts if you so wish. All right, I want to get caught up with these last couple super chats, and then we'll hop into Karak Asgraz. Biofun. Barak Var definitely has crabs and crab dwarfs. I don't think they're going to take kindly to you saying that. Honestly, crabs for dwarfs is probably a very horrible problem when and if it does happen. Sean Schultz, where are the Andy maps of the Dawi holds?
There aren't any. I've done maps that include Dawi holds, but I never did a map of just the Dawi holds. And I kind of wish I had, because every map the Games Workshop does misses tons of them. And many of them are super fun. They've been added in some of the novels, or they've been added in a roleplay book. In one case, they were added in a comic. And they add some really nice little details. But whenever Games Workshop falls back onto its core maps, it always does the same holds again and again and again. And some of those holds are no longer the biggest holds in the areas that they discuss. They generally, though, when they get rewritten in the next edition, get repitched and re-upped, and they go, and the biggest hold in the Grey Mountains is, where previously it was, this is a hold in the Grey Mountains, or originally, this is one of many holds in the Grey Mountains. It's interesting to see how the generations pass on, and they slowly but surely dial up the holds from the 1, 2, 3 mark to 11. Everything's 11. This is the bestest of this sort of hold. No, this is the bestest. None of the holds can just be places. Which in many respects, some of them probably just should be. Everyone's got its own character, of course, but some of them shouldn't necessarily always be the bestest at thisest. This is a sea mariner hold, the only place where dwarves have seas and mariners and stuff. What about the dwarves that live in other ports? There's quite a lot of them. No, they don't have ships. They only come from Bar and Var. So how did they get to those ports? They walked.
Uphill, both ways, in the snow.
Always amusing.
Oh, the joys. All right, so Karak Asgaraz, which roughly translates to the hold of the fearless axe.
Awesome.
Karak Asgaraz is actually a fairly interesting little hold. It's not like one of necessarily the largest or most important, but as far as being explored in stories, it has some of the most detail out of all of the various holds. Very much because it's featured very heavily thanks to things like the Vermintide video game, as well as the roleplay game, as Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th edition especially, which centered very heavily around Ubersreich, and actually 3rd edition, Andy's right, 3rd edition did it first. 4th edition just added on. Because Ubersreich was kind of the main character, you'll notice on this little here map that Karak Asgaraz is quite close to old Ubersreich. It's been there for quite a while. Karak Asgaraz, one of the things that's very interesting about it is that when you're dealing with dwarf holds that have been involved in humanity's history, Karak Asgaraz is up near the top of dealing with humans. Most of the Dawi here, for the Great Mountain Dwarves, most of them moved over after the things went really, really bad over in the World's Edge Mountains with the time of woes. And there was a bunch of earthquakes and a bunch of dwarves got displaced and had to relocate. And many of them made their way over to the Great Mountains. And Karak Asgaraz actually has a longer history. Prior to the War of Vengeance, it was Kazad Asgaraz, and it was a different kind of trading post type thing, but eventually evolved into a full hold later on. And so the dwarves were there way before a lot of the human stuff started happening. There were some early humans around, but it was like the Balthani people. And what's interesting is that the Karak Asgaraz dwarves get explored as they actually liked the Balthani quite a bit. So when all of these other human tribes showed up and started killing all the Balthani, they were kind of put in this weird position of they wanted to protect the humans, but this was also a very human conflict, which is something that dwarf law doesn't necessarily have the greatest grasp of, because it's kinslaying, right? It's kinslaying to such a ridiculous degree. But ultimately, the only reason a good chunk of the Balthani actually survived the purges, particularly by the Unbaragan tribe, is because the dwarfs of Karak Asgaraz stepped in and basically kind of negotiated a situation to allow some of the Balthani to survive. You're welcome, modern day druids and life wizards. But they then would go on to establish a very close relationship to the Unbaragan people, as well as the Brittany people once they moved across the mountains and moved into Bretonnia. They have a huge influence on humanity. And Ubersreich in particular has had a very close on and off, mostly good, but every once in a while there'd be a bit of an issue relationship with Karak Asgaraz. But Karak Asgaraz for a long time was a very, very wealthy hold. They actually managed to be situated on a pretty serious vein of gold and various other precious metals. But several hundred years ago, that ran out. And Karak Asgaraz has been kind of struggling for the last several hundred years and been relying more and more and more on working with the humans around them. So doing a lot of trade, sending because they still have tons of other metals, but not as precious metals, which aren't as valuable to the dwarves. So your tin, copper, iron, stuff like that. So they're still able to make Mastercraft work or work with the people from Ubersreich, which is great because Ubersreich likes to get burned down every few years. So it's very helpful to have a group of Dawi that you can negotiate to come over and help out. Which some of those stories are more inspirational than others. I mean, there was the time that Drakenfels unleashed a whole tide of demons that kind of ate Ubersreich, and the dwarves helped build it back up. And then there was a greenskin Wa that ran it over, and the dwarves helped build it back up. And then Magnus the Pious did his whole thing. But sometimes the stories have been not as good. There's a very infamous case where there was a discussion between the king of Karaz at the time, and I think this was the arrangement they actually made with Magnus, but Magnus was already dead by the time the dwarves fulfilled it, which was that they promised they would build a wall around parts of Uberstrike. I think that was 3 dwarfs tall or something like that, and the dwarfs agreed to it. And what the king did is he argued that it didn't stipulate that it was adult dwarfs, so he used 3 baby dwarfs, like infants, as it has to be 3 dwarfs tall. Well, I'll make it 3 infants tall. And the humans got super pissed and turned into a whole fucking thing. It turned into a whole diplomatic incident. Though eventually the dwarves did build much of what modern day Uberstrike is. Uberstrike is very, very famous for its dwarf built bridge that supposedly has a treasure somewhere beneath it or upon it. They also built a lot of the walls around Uberstrike, which has made Uberstrike into a veritable fortress of like Uberstrike. It's been through a lot of bad shit, but as far as places that have the ability to defend itself goes, it's up there. Mostly because there's so much of that Karaz work in it.
Yeah, so let's sum up Karaz. It's pretty easy to do. This was an area that was originally settled by dwarves. The War of Vengeance came along, and the dwarves had their asses handed to them. Not twice, but 3 times. The entire area was run by elves after this until they left the old world. When they left the old world, the dwarves came creeping back and they built their holes. They dug deep, got themselves some nice mines, and then they found that things weren't going that well. And what turned it around for them was their alliance with Sigmar. Their alliance with Sigmar gave them strong trading partners, and a Grey Mountain hold and the Grey Dwarves that lived there found themselves in a better place than many of the other holds because of this. This is a dwarven hold that doesn't do things like the holds over in the World's Edge Mountains because it's poor. It's not in a good place. It's not, in the greater scheme of things, a great hold. What it is a hold that has had to trade with its neighbors to survive. And repeated kings have held grudges about this and get into a lot of petty conflicts because of it, including, for example, I think it was 20 dwarves, not 2 dwarves, 3 dwarves. Hi.
I think it was 20. Yeah.
I think it was 20. I only say that. I wrote that piece. You think I'd remember. I don't.
No, you're right. You're right.
I think it was 20. I want to go check it. And then indeed, I'm going to probably go check it because I now need to know. It'll be in my notes somewhere from when I wrote it. The Asgaraz dwarves have always been the ones that look over at Ankor with great jealousy because they're independent, they're free. They can't see how hard they have it in the World's Edge Mountains. All they see is the deep mines and what lies within them with greed and avarice in their heart. And what do they have to do instead? Trade with humans and still deal with the greenskins that surround them all the time. But they do trade well, and they trade with both Bretonnia and the Empire. They set a pass, the Grey Lady Pass, that gives them a pretty strong trading opportunity, meaning that the hold isn't as poor as it could be, but in comparison to the greater hold you find over in the World's Edge, it is a much smaller, much more modest, and in terms of its history, a very poor hold. It doesn't have the great tales from the beginning of time because the elves destroyed them. And because of that, of all the holds, this is one of the holds that holds some of the deepest elf grudges. And a lot of those elf grudges aren't to any individual, to any person that they can actually lay blame to, because they didn't have any book of grudges that held through, because they all died.
I was going to say there were no survivors.
There was no survivors. It's basically an enormous made-up grudge against all elves, to the point that the elves that are down just a few miles south of them, like 150 miles or so, down in Lorebeards, they refuse to even acknowledge they exist under most circumstances. As far as they're concerned, they're just elgy scum that they won't deal with. The elves kind of don't care. But the dwarves have cut themselves away from the elves entirely because of what happened now thousands of years ago. It's a little bit like us holding grudges against ancient Egyptians. for what they might have done. No, it's worse because that's not far enough back. It's a little bit like us holding grudges against ancient African tribesfolk in the middle of Africa for daring to go against other ancient tribe folk out of Africa all those thousands of years ago and still hating them for it. And going, well, anyone that comes from an ancient African tribesfolk, that's all of humanity. We're all kind of descended from there. Well, everyone, I hate everyone. And they still carry that grudge without a single source. So this isn't grudge-holding dwarves like, say, for example, Thorgrim, who's got a big, long litany inside the Great Book of Grudges that he can slowly but surely get angry about. They're getting angry about nothing.
Yeah, to a very comical and literally stupid degree, where Karaz, every century, a group of dwarfs will get really angry, thinking about how pissed off they are at Athelloren.
They
marched down there, and none of them have ever returned, ever.
None.
And they keep doing it. They keep doing it.
And it's nothing to do with any of those wood elves. None of those wood elves are a component of the forces that once were occupying Asgaraz. They're basically just killing people because they're racist.
Yep.
That's it. They are just racists. So Karak Asgaraz is a fine example of a bunch of racist dwarves.
Yeah, there's something very funny about them because they're probably one of the most pro-human holds, but are also simultaneously the most anti-anything else holds.
It's a funny old place. So, some for our vote. This is up to you how you want to do it. Again, these are dwarfs. Do you think this dwarven hold is a fine example of dwarfiness? If so, time for an S tier. If you think that this is not, because they're mostly just racist in their own way, then pop it down. It's not the richest hold. It's not the biggest hold. It certainly isn't a hold with a long storied past, but it is a hold that's a little bit more forward thinking than some of the old Ankor ones that are sitting all the way over in the World's Edge Mountains. This hold does trade with its neighbors frequently. And it very much only exists to this day because of its willingness to trade. Its willingness to work with Sigmar and his descendants from that point onwards has very much changed the nature of this hold, and also Reichland, which is a very dwarf-friendly grand province in comparison to some of the other places.
Yeah, maybe you love it because you have such fond memories of the map, playing through the maps of the 3+ maps of Karaz and Vermintide, or maybe you hate it because of the 3+ maps in Vermintide.
It's also, for those of you looking at your history, a very new hold in terms of when it was added to the canon. It wasn't added until this century, cripes, 2000 or around about 10, somewhere around there. It's only about 10, 15 years old as a hold. It was added in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 3 and given great detail in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 3. And when Vermintide came along, it used the books that were the most current at the time, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 3, as their starting point. So because of that, we got ourselves Ubersreich and Karak Asgaraz as core story points in their game because they were drawing from the newest roleplay books. And that's one of the reasons why when I did the 4th edition, I immediately jumped in on Ubersreich as well, because there was a lot of people already playing there and used to it. So there you go. It's a relatively new one.
I love how you could tell what type of dwarf fans in chat when you got people being like, hey, they're poor, they're not, it's a poor hold label, and you have people being like, the hate elves, S tier.
S tier. yeah, these are real elf haters. So if you love your dwarf grudge, then this is a definite S tier for you.
All right, let's see. Super Arlock. Michael Moorcock really is Michael Lesscock now with the amount of people stealing from him.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, it's really funny. I remember a big discussion at an authors conference that I was at, and it was who's more influential, Tolkien or Moorcock? And it was funny because everyone started saying, well, clearly it's Tolkien. I mean, clearly, because of everything that he did. By the end of it, the consensus was, and the final vote, that Michael Moorcock easily won, even though, and this is the one that was really amusing, out of all the people who are there, all of the authors knew who he was, but all of the people doing the votes, as in the people who were part of the audience, of which there was about 150, only about 15 of them had read his books or even knew who he was. But the vote across that entire audience was, even though I obviously like Tolkien and I've read it, more influential is Michael Moorcock because of the authors in front of me saying that if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be writing the books that I'm writing today.
Yeah, what was really interesting for me is that he's so much like, I think for the average person, they don't encounter his works because he didn't get like the movies and a lot of that stuff that Tolkien has
really
gotten.
Funny.
That
Dorian Hockman got optioned by BBC, massive series. COVID happened. Elric of Melniboné got optioned by, I think it was Universal. But then the Golden Compass tanked, so they went, "Oh, we're not doing fantasy anymore." So they didn't do the Elric movie. It's funny. Every single generation, there's been an almost. And the only movie we ever had that, of Michael Moorcock's stuff that I'm aware of off the top of my head was Jerry Cornelius, which starred David Bowie, of all people, the final program, all the way back in the 70s, but is the least Michael Moorcocky of Michael Moorcock creations in the Eternal Champion sequence. So it's a funny, crazy fever dream of a movie.
It's weird, especially when you're a fantasy American, an American that loves fantasy stuff, because you go, I've never heard of this guy in my life, but I've read a ton of fantasy. And then when you start learning about him and actually reading his ideas and his books, you go, oh, wait, no, I know this guy intimately. I just only knew people that were inspired by him.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what the book convention concluded, that the inspirational aspect of what he did was extraordinary, but simultaneously he had a very niche readership.
Poor man, he needs more royalties. Korishima, so $600 to have all the holes in F tier where the dwarves belong. I mean, sure, but if you think the dwarf heads would stand for that. Stephen Lucas, so the future of dwarf evolution is crazy dwarfs. By dwarf standards, yes. By
dwarf standards, and this is a cultural thing. Dwarves see what they're doing as crazy down in, say, for example, Barak Var. They see it as undwarf-like and unacceptable. But if you look back to what dwarves were doing at the beginning, right at the beginning of time, what Barak Var dwarves are doing is what dwarves always did in the past. In many respects, the entrenched view that has become the Ankor standard is new. It's a newfangled way of dwarves to present themselves.
Some would say it's even a corruption of the dwarven mindset.
Yes, they would. Absolutely say it's a corruption. And when you consider the unspoken story of the dwarves, which is, where is Hashut? I say, tackled that in the last three Lawhammers.
Acne Zebra and an old Lorebeards, you mentioned the sky bridges connecting the very peaks, which seems very non-Dawi. Where are they? What did they do? Other tall builds? Okay, so one thing to keep in mind with dwarfs is that dwarfs build big, really big. Like they are some of the most absurdist constructors in the setting, considering they don't use magic, especially. Like elves build really tall structures, but they use magic, so it like kind of makes sense that they cheat. Dwarves build absolutely monolithic, absurdist nonsense. If you think about it for more than 5 seconds. And the sky bridges in and of themselves actually do make a good amount of sense, because they allow so a dwarf hold is usually in a mountain, but it builds out into surrounding peaks. And there's usually like all sorts of other stuff going on. And what the dwarves did is they basically built bridges between the mountain peaks that are so high up, nothing can get to those places. So messengers and other sorts of important information or supplies and things can be moved very quickly around these bridges. And the dwarves built them in a very practical way, which is to say a dwarfy way. So they're surprised from a human perspective. They're very narrow. There's barely any rail. There's usually no rails or anything to like hold on to, because dwarves are very stout, solid little guys, and they just right across it without any problems, because dwarves are very sure-footed. But for anything else trying to cross them, like these bridges are so high, anyone else trying to cross them, it's basically a death trap.
Kind of. Yeah, they're loosely speaking, they're a perfect representation of the dwarven mindset, which is, I need to be over in that peak. What's the quickest way to get there? And the answer is a straight line. And the engineers sat down and went, can we do this? Because if we get a straight line between here and the next peak, then we have uninterrupted trade and no one can attack it. So they sat down, they figured it out, and they did it. In a similar fashion to how the Romans made all their straight roads, or figured we need to get water in, we're going to build long aqueducts from the source of the water directly into the cities. They did exactly the same idea. They ported the trade from the next holds directly into their cities. It's a classic piece of basic dwarf thinking and dwarf engineering, and the entirety of the World's Edge all the way up to the Grey Mountains are proliferated with the ruins of ancient sky bridges that used to stand. Many of them still do stand, but most of them fell during the thousands of years of warfare that the dwarves underwent, particularly after the Lord of the, not even the War of the Beard that's the big problem, the War of Vengeance. It's the Greenskins and the Goblin Wars. They wiped out almost all of the sky bridges. Some still exist, and the primary holds are still connected, but in a more wending route, where once it would have been almost direct, now they'll take a sky bridge over to a fallen hold, and then they'll go through that hold, take another sky bridge over to another one, and make a long roundabouty path to get there. It's not that the technology for building sky bridges is gone. It's still there amongst some of the engineers. It's just that it's almost exorbitantly expensive in time, in labor, and in just basic gold. When the dwarves are very much a besieged species, they don't have the space or time to be building them in the way they used to. So sky bridges used to be a common feature across the entirety of the mountain ranges of the old world. Now, whilst there are still many of them, they are nothing in comparison to what they used to be.
Yeah, I mean, if you go read Gotrek and Felix, there's I don't remember which book it is, but in one of the books when they're in the dwarf role, they use a sky bridge to get from like one place to another, and Felix is like losing his shit the entire time, and Gotrek's like, stop complaining, this is like the safest way to travel. And it's like, ugh.
And the wind up there. Just to bring up one tiny little comment on the side there. Hashut in Lawhammer, I think I missed something. I'll just say one thing. Hashut is Lawhammer.
That's not a damning sounding statement at all. All right.
Yeah, so if you're falling behind, wow.
We'll go ahead and wrap up that poll, and the people have spoken.
What they spoken?
Asgaraz is C tier.
Right in the middle, Jim. Do I think that's fair? What do you think?
I mean, I think kind of when you're comparing all of the dwarf holds, I think that's a pretty fair place for kind of like Asgaraz to wind up when you think about its influence in like the greater dwarfdom, versus including like its really struggling finances, and that a lot of it's a very human dependent hold, which from a Dawi perspective is kind of embarrassing and something that the kind of like Asgaraz dwarves do not take kindly to. Like they have had some very recent successes that are cool for them, but in the grand scheme of like, you know, all the dwarf holds and stuff, there's a reason when the early on when the Skaven unleashed one of their big attack waves, Kadak Asgaraz is one of the holds deeply threatened, where the rest of the holds held out pretty nicely.
Yeah, I agree completely. In fact, there's nothing you say I disagree with. Karak Asgaraz is a small hold, a hold that has held on because of some good decisions, but also a hold that could have been so much bigger, stronger, and more centrally focused if not for bad decisions. Those bad decisions include the many, many upsets they've had with the Empire and Bretonnia, often over imagined slights, or them attempting to pull the rug out from underneath the humans that they are allies with, as they've attempted to basically shortchange them. And why they tried to shortchange them? Because they don't have much change in themselves. They're needing to scrape together every coin that they can, because they are attacked from all sides by greenskins, more greenskins, and then the elves that they attack and murder another host of their own people. A lot of very foolish decisions has left them in a very, very poor place. If they had had forward-thinking kings, and if they had had kings like, say, for example, the Barak Var kings, who, in the great scheme of dwarves, are not really that forward-thinking, but if they had just had someone who was willing to look at the allegiances that they had around them and capitalize on them and use them to properly bolster themselves up and become a center of trade, Karak Asgaraz would be one of the biggest cities in the center of the old world. It just would be, but it isn't. And there's a reason it isn't, and it's the dwarf mindset. And the dwarf mindset is, we don't need you. We need ourselves. and the elves ruined everything, so we're going to try and kill them every so many years. And humans, you're much worse than we are. We're better at everything, but we kind of need you to buy our stuff, so we're not going to say it to your face very often, maybe every other week. And by the way, we're better. That's it. And it's a really blunt way of describing it, but they don't come across particularly well sometimes. So Karaz, I think, is very much a clear example of a hold that could be an equivalent of Barak Var. It could be the center of trade in the old world, because it's got Altdorf just up there. It's got on the other side, Paravon just sitting there. And these are big cities. It's sitting right in the middle of it. And Ubersreich, which has been bolstered by dwarf technology that they get no real benefit of, because almost everything that Ubersreich has, they begrudge. And they go, well, they only have it because of us.
Yeah, it definitely is one of those holds that feels like in the last 150 years, especially of the timeline, they've started to make worse and worse decisions and are struggling.
Yeah, I think that the Humble Scholar it just seems like Karaz embodies the worst dwarf traits. And yet, to some respects, they sort of do. And you can almost see how it happened, because later writers, when we're talking about the third edition of the game, the dwarf character had been so established by this point that they took all of the stereotypes and went, that's what this hold is going to be. Rather than thinking of them as a living, breathing community, they went, all of the stereotypes, we're going to drop them on this hold. And it left that hold in a rather dark place. And that's cool, because you can tell really good stories with that.
I just have to pull out this comment because it's very cute. It's weird. I came to care so much for the Lawhammer player characters that the possibility of their death was unhealthily distressing, and I actually had to take a step back.
Understandable.
That's cute. That's very cute. That's how you know you're following a good story. All right. Anyway, we got to keep moving. Next up, Karak Azul, the Iron Peak.
Iron. Yeah.
So, if you can't tell by the name, the Iron Peak has a fuck ton of iron. Karak Azul is the southernmost hold that is still actively a part of the Karaz Ankor in the modern day. And it is a hold that, unfortunately, in the last century or so, has become much more dominated by tragedy than anything else, which we'll get to in a little bit. But the history of Karak Azul is that Karak Azul is built with this, it's this beautiful positioned hold overlooking this great plateau in a valley. And they have access to an incredible amount of minerals. They're one of the most mineral-rich holds out there besides the capital of Karak itself. And all of that iron they make great use out of, as they have some of the best weaponsmiths in the entirety of the Dwarven realms. Obviously, everyone's favorite runesmith, who is still actively going out to the battlefields, Thoric Ironbrow, is from Karak Azul, and he helps run everything there. And they just churn out very, very high quality masterpiece weapons that are sent out to not just over the dwarf realms, but also to other allies and people who are able to pay. And getting a weapon that's marked with the sign of Karak Azul means you're dealing with some, it might appear just to be a simple steel weapon, but it's going to be like, it's probably not some crazy runic thing, but it is going to be best quality if you've played Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. That perfectly balanced, oh my god, it feels like an extension of my arm crap. But Karak Azul, as I said, its legacy has been somewhat tarnished in recent years, thanks to the conniving and schemes of a really, really big bad orc by the name of Gorfang Rotgut, who, thanks to the assistance of some Skaven, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go read the Queequeg novel, found his way to a secret unknown tunnel that led him into the very heart of Karak Azul, where him and a bunch of his lads killed a bunch of dwarfs, crucified the prince Kazik on the throne of Karak Azul, and then kidnapped a bunch of the other dwarfs and ran back to Blackcrag. And ever since that day, the Iron Peak has become a very dour, cheerless, bleak place. It still pumps out weapons, but it is a place where joy has no foothold. And Khazador Dragonslayer, who is one of the scariest fucking kings. His epithet, Dragon Slayer, that is not for fun. He is a big dwarf.
Big dwarf.
He has a big fuck you shield. I'll put it this way. Cazador is such a badass that he gets shot in the chest with a fucking Giselle, not even phased.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he just looks down at it and brushes it off of his armor. Like, it's just no big deal. That is a warpstone bullet coming out like a sniper cannon.
Are we ready for some controversy? Because, you know, we haven't had much option here. Okay, so Karaz. There's something we can say clearly about Karaz, and that was it's separated from the rest of the big long tunnels that sit underneath the dwarf underways for absolutely ages, thousands of years. It developed itself by itself off in a corner of the dwarf empire. And it pretty much separated itself entirely without having any real description for why. What was going on there beyond the collapsed tunnels and the Goblin Wars and everything else. It's not that far to Karaz Karak, or even Barak Var, or anywhere else. There's a whole bunch of Karaks that have been within range for a long time. I have an answer for you. Go take a look at its flag. Just take a look at its flag. And we can bring it up here. Is it on, on the...
Yeah, I'll get it.
Let's see if it's... is it there? I want the original flag. Do you have the original flag there?
Yeah, I'm getting it. Give me a second.
yeah. The original flag is really interesting.
Let's see.
I mean, really interesting. Okay, you'll probably find it'll probably be on the wiki or something somewhere because it'll be around. I've already got it. No, I don't have it. That's not it.
Okay, so it's not the Anvil Peak one.
I want this one. Let's see if I can get it first. How am I going to save that file? Save.
The oldest one.
This is worth having a look at. Right, I've got it there. Let's see if I can present that on my side. So open up, no, not slides, from my computer, please.
It would help if I knew what he was talking about, so I'll just let him do it.
Right, here we go. Give me a second while I just go find it. Oh, it's trying to open up the wrong one. Here we go. I want share screen, please, and I would like to open up this one. Share. Is that showing?
Oh, okay. Okay. I did see that. I just didn't realize
look at that. Look at that. What's that?
It's
a lightning chaos dwarf.
Yeah, I was gonna say it does look like a chaos dwarf.
This is the hold of industry, the greatest forging hold that the dwarves have ever had, and it went silent. Why? Why?
How suspicious.
Look at their flag. Look at that. Just take a moment to think. Does that look like a chaos dwarf to you? Does that look like the core iconography of what would become Hashut's iconography later? So my piece of controversy is there's a reason that this is the best hold at making stuff. There's a reason that it just fell out of the Karak Ankor and no one spoke to them for thousands of years, because this is Hashut's original hold. This is where the High King of the Dwarves first came from. It's sitting right there. Look at that bad boy. Now, does that look like your standard dwarf to me? The answer is, you kind of know. Even the flat hat. Look at that.
I can't believe they had to rebrand. God, it's 1984.
Just look at that. It's just brilliant. So, as is always the case with Lorebeards, we like to occasionally just throw a curveball that you don't expect in one of our streams. Okay, I'll let you do your one before I finish mine.
Sure. So one thing that I'll add about Karak Azul is also the whole that Games Workshop, in my opinion, fucked over the hardest because their lore is super incomplete. Of not only this, which is a very cool theory, and I actually am fucking with it big time, that they held on to Hashut the longest, which caused problems, but also gave them a lot of strengths, and they were able to actually walk away with the core of his tenets. But the second thing is that Karak Azul was once likely the absolute wealthiest hold because they were one of the closest and likely and did have the closest relationship with the Nehakarans.
Yeah. It's a fascinating history.
And GW just doesn't want to deal with it. Now, in the old world, they've touched on it, but they haven't gone into depth.
Yeah, so my conclusion for Karak Azul is that we've got the Great Southern Hold, which is still got the hottest forges. It's sitting on a volcano, bubbling away in the background, constantly throwing fireworks all the time up into the sky. This is basically the fire hold of the south. It is a walking, talking, not Dawi Zar, Dawi hold. This is clearly the source of what would become much of the Chaos Dwarves in the future. The entire mindset of this place gets ported out and becomes the mindset of the Dawi Zar. They are the great constructors in the south. Now you go, well, that sounds fucking awesome. Does that make it a good hold? For some, no, it does not. They were separated from the rest of the Karak Ankor for thousands of years with absolutely no trade routes connected, with only one thing standing out for them, and that was if you held one of their weapons, you had the best weapons that the dwarves could make. That hardly anybody was in contact with them for that entire time. Dwarves being dwarves, we can probably come up with a good reason why that might have been the case. It doesn't even mean that they even held on to anything to do with the shut. They literally might have held on to nothing. But dwarves hold grudges. And it's not a grudge against that hold. It's a grudge against who that hold once had possibly in control of it. But more importantly, what's the hold today and what are we voting on? We're voting on a crushed, doomed southern hold, which is a mess. It's not a great place. It's still got its great forges and it still produces the best that dwarves can possibly offer from the forge. But nevertheless, it is surrounded, it's in trouble, and it's embittered. It is not a good place to live. It's not a happy place. And it's also, in the greater scheme of dwarf holds, pretty poor, because what little coin it's managed to gather together is almost always spent on more arms to try and protect themselves from the gathering forces on all sides. It's a sad hold, not a happy place. And if you add the story, or left-wing unexpected chaos dwarf involvement, if you add that story on as well, then it's a really sad, long story that possibly the dwarves there don't even know, because as we know, dwarves expunge stuff from records that they don't like. It's very possible that they hold on to one of the most important legacies that the dwarves have, i.e. where the kingship of the dwarves went. What happened with their great ancestor god of kingship? And the answer is, he probably lived here. And no one wants that to be the case. And if that is true, this is possibly the first place where the throne of power was. Not where they pretend.
I will, to add some upsides to Karak Azul for why it could be argued one of the best holds. Karak Azul is the only survivor in the south. The south side of the World's Edge Mountains got annihilated by dragons and greenskins and Skaven and all sorts of horrible stuff. The greatest hold of the south was considered to be Karak 8 Peaks until it fell. And once it went down, it caused like a whole... Well, actually, it fell near the end. But there was a ton of holds around it that just got absolutely decimated. And Karak Azul is very lonely because it's the only one left.
Right by Karak 8 Peaks. I mean... isolated for thousands of years, right by Karak 8 Peaks.
Yeah, and it really wasn't until Karak 8 Peaks finally started getting some footholds that they were able to more efficiently reconnect with the rest of the Karaz Ankor. Once they started getting the Ungrin, the underway open between Karak 8 Peaks and Karak Azul, that changed so much. And Karak Azul started really coming back out into the world again. Because Andy's right, a lot of people weren't sure if they were dead or not for a while. Because it was so difficult to get to where they were.
And I will add, though, that much like the Norse dwarves, bullshit.
Yeah.
Bullshit. It's bullshit. Dwarves are not that blind. It's not that far. It's impossible that an entire hold of dwarves that are not at war that entire time didn't send one person the 150 miles to the capital. to the next town. It's just nonsense. Clearly, as we discussed with the Norse dwarves previously, there's a story we should probably mind to rationalize it. And not being on speaking terms is as good as dead to a dwarf.
Yeah, but
so you could very easily build a fun story there if you want.
Yeah, it does have, despite his tragedy, one of the coolest kings. I mean, the Cazador has killed a fucking dragon.
He is awesome.
Yeah, Thoric Ironbrow lives there, who is a badass in his own right with a very complex story. And at the end of the day, Karakazul it's a very interesting expression of dwarf that is very fun because it shows how the dwarves deal with severe tragedy, which is that they deal with it kind of in the unfortunate but understandable stoic old white man way of they bottle it all up and they get really violent. Because they do kick ass. Karakazul, they beat Quick Headtaker. They beat him. Gorfang Rotgut, Black Crag does get cracked open and beaten by them. Like, they are a scary fucking hold once they get on the move, but they're slow to get on the move.
Yeah, if you want a hold that endures no matter what hardship comes its way, you could not ask for a better hold, because it does. And it endures hell. It's right by Nagash. It's right by Skaven. It's right by Greenskins. It's right by probably scores of fallen holds. One hold after another is falling around them, and they stand. They endure. Also, if you want a hold, it's possibly at the very heart of one of the biggest conspiracy theories that the dwarves have, i.e., what the fuck happened with Hashut?
Which would make so much sense for them, honestly.
Well, of course it would. I mean, the whole story makes sense if you include that. If you want that, it's a clear winner. But if you're judging them by how much wealth they have, their standing, the position that they have, their overall history within the official storyline, this hold is not much. There's not much there. I mean, it makes some nice weapons. It has a couple of big fights, but there's not much. But it has an enormous amount of potential.
Yeah, they are also very much on team. If they got to decide what was going on, the dwarves were doomed, because they are the leading faction. Like when they have the big Kingsmoot, they are the leading force for fuck everyone else, seal the holds, we'll survive. We don't need help. Which they're wrong. They're just wrong.
Yeah, classic piece of Hashut thinking there.
Like Andy's got an extra grind. All right.
That's a really interesting one to vote. Good luck. It's up to you to decide where you want to put it. I know where I'd put it. I imagine it's not going to be the same place as the rest of you, but I could be wrong. Let's find out. Do get voting. Your voting is what makes this fun.
Yeah, Ricky Chapman.
Hey, Ricky. What's it going to be?
Die there. A dwarf slayer. She died with 30 arrows in her back and her axe buried deep in a giant skull. That sounds like a great death for a slayer.
I'm hoping that it wasn't the giant that killed her, but if so, then who did kill her? Where was the 30? That'd be a lot of arrows fired by a giant. Where does the 30 arrows come from? Goblins?
I mean, knowing Karak Asgaraz, they're going to say elves. The clearly goblin arrows. Elf did it. Elfie did it. Well, but how much to make Karazakarak in Dwarf Fortress? I've never played that game, so I don't know how difficult of a task that is. So I'm just going to go ahead and say some ridiculous number like $500. So I know you won't do it, and I don't have to find out. Drew Berkebile. Hello! First time doing a super chat. Oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad you could join us.
Thank you very much.
Love everything you guys do. I listen between calls on my shift as a paramedic. Thank you for all the
job.
love. Well, thank you for all the work you do. I know that is unfortunately deeply underpaid and thankless job. Thank you very deeply for taking care of people that
As someone who makes great use of my local health service, I very much appreciate what you do.
Elementary exposure. If any Dawi celebrated Festivus, then would they start with drinking/dancing around the Festivus pole, or would they skip to the airing of grievances? Happy belated B-Day to my fellow Christmas baby.
Hey! Yeah, you might actually note that I am wearing my A Year of Birth hat. There you go, limited edition 1975. That's how old I am. Thanks everyone for calling out that I am indeed 50. Holy shit balls.
Yeah. So I will note dwarves tend to have a very strict structure to how like a festival type thing will go. Airing of grievances is a very important part of their culture. If you read the Belagar novella, so it's not a full novel, it's more like a short story. They actually go over one of these instances. There's an airing of grievances following the anniversary of a tragedy at Karakifix, actually. But one of the things about it is that, generally speaking, and this, you could argue this is not the correct way to do it. They do tend to do like the feasting and the getting drunk then the airing of grievances traditionally. But there is almost always a notable step afterwards where you are supposed to like chill out with like food or some sort of storytelling or a ceremony. There is always a step that comes after the airing of grievances that is meant to get dwarves to calm the fuck down, because the airing of grievances gets intense.
Dwarves are intense by nature. So all of that, sure.
Read the Bellegarde novella, but you'll literally see that play out.
I'll loosely say that you tend to find most dwarven festivals are deeply structured, but they need it because they are known for their tangents going off on one, and their passions getting in the way of what they're supposed to do. There's a reason that there's so much structure in dwarf society. It's because dwarves themselves are not very good at following structure. It's why they have to do so much building around them, because they are noted for getting rather passionate about things.
Yeah, read that book. There's some really funny moments you'll get of like dwarf cultures clashing, of like Thorgrim thinks it's kind of weak if anyone airs a grievance, but they don't sit for like 24 hours staring at each other without saying anything before they air whatever grievance it is. And it's very funny.
60s.
60s.
What
Wow.
the hell?
No need to be mean.
I need more Just for Men in my beard. I need to get back to my ginger beard. I've got to start buying my beard. 60s. Thanks, I song.
Stephen Lucas, Calor Dragon Tamer versus Dragon Slayer. I smell a rivalry. There would definitely be stories that I would love to explore, of that you have a culture that sees dragons as the ultimate slaying versus a culture that honors dragons as partners. There have been clashes there.
Partners.
Yeah.
Partners.
Darius Rose, Gorfang, so what? Your kitty and in beard is not a nice flayed carpet for me pet squig to crap all over, cuz. Don't get your little beard in a twist. Yeah, it was what he did to Karaz.
It's a story. It's nasty. Yeah, it is nasty.
Ricky Chapman, our current Wolford campaign, we have a rifle and axe with the Iron Peak. Gifts for helping with the recovery of runic armor. That is a suitable. See, I'll tell you what. If people that play Wolford campaigns, there's nothing that kind of makes me go like, ugh, when you have someone that's like, oh, I got a Grumroll as a gift. It's like, no dwarf would ever give you Grumroll. They wouldn't. Like, unless you did something incredible. But like a gift from the Iron Peak, that's a high quality thing that you would be likely to get. Also, I'm looking at the time. I'm going to go ahead and call the poll because holy shit, we are behind. And the winner is A tier for Karakazul.
Oh God, that was close.
It was actually very close to an S and A, which I think is very suitable of putting it top of A tier.
I think that's so as well. So what do you think? A tier? Does that seem fitting to you for Karakazul?
I think so. I think it's a very important hold for like what dwarfdom represents. I think that its survival says a lot about it, and it's one of the most enduring holds. I do think it does have honestly, for me, funny enough, the big reason I wouldn't put it S tier is because I feel like it has too many untold stories.
Yeah, I agree. Karakazul is a story of potential that was never unleashed. It is a story that all the seeds are there for a good writer to go, holy shit, I can make sense of this. I can actually build a story that answers all of the unanswered questions of the dwarves. And all of the seeds have been put there by mistake. This wasn't done by design. The banner we showed you earlier was just an early banner. That's just what dwarves sort of looked like back in the day. And nevertheless, all the tools are there. But have those tools been used? No, they languish in the hold, unused. The best tools that the dwarves have to offer are not being wielded. Meaning that we've got a hold of spoiled possibility, and that's it. For me, it's an easy B tier. Easy, because the hold itself isn't rich. It is a squandered potential. It does absolutely nothing barring having a really cool yet sad king. And quite a few places in the Dwarven realms have cool but sad kings. So he's not even exclusive. Oh, but he's hard. Aren't they fucking all? Because nobody likes making a hard dwarf than Games Workshop. And by the gods, they've made all the kings fucking rock hard. So for me, this is an easy B because of everything that it's not. And it's not well written.
I will say, my love of Thoric Ironbrow definitely colors. It definitely colors.
I can understand that. Thoric Eyebrow is awesome.
All right. Carrick 8 Peaks. So this one, I'm going to be
controversial.
I'm going to be very frank with you all because in the interest of time, this one's on here because of a technicality. It is technically a hold that has dwarfs and parts of it that are currently alive. But Carrick 8 Peaks is more like a war-torn battlefield of hell that is one of the most horrible places a dwarf can currently be. That is also technically livable by the strictest definition. They only own the surface and, like, I think most of the first and second deep, and that's it. They barely control any of it. They don't even control all of the peaks. They only control, like, the surface town. And even then, Goblin Town is still down there at the bottom. Carrick 8 Peaks sucks. It's a terrible place to be. And it's somewhere that if the dwarfs were very reasonable and were thinking very carefully, they would have abandoned. They should have abandoned. But they're dwarves.
Don't do that, do they? Because dwarves.
I do think Carrick 8 Peaks is one of the most important tragedies of the dwarves, especially their unwillingness to let it go, especially in the end times. I think Belagar's story in the end times, his failure in the end times of not being able to let go and dooming his people, is one of the best dwarf stories. It's one of the best parts of the end times. Like it's in like my top 10 end time stuff. But like as a dwarf hold, by every metric that exists, it sucks.
Yeah, I mean, we can sum this one up pretty easily. It used to be one of the most important holds. It's almost certainly the hold that was founded by Valea in the same way that Karakazul was founded by Hashut.
Yes.
I'm totally calling that. And I'm going to keep on saying it until they say it isn't. Because one day someone will write that it isn't.
Until they watch Lorebeards and go, oh, write that down. Write that down and put it in the next the old world Karakazul book. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, brilliant. But in truth, this was one of the most important holds because it held the wife of all of the other gods just sitting there. In many respects, this is the center of the spider web of the old Karak Ankor. However, the center of the spider web of holds that comes out from here and goes up across all the spines is sacked about 3,000 years ago. And it languishes in the hands of everybody else except for dwarves. And for the vast majority of its existence, it is not a hold, but there was an attempt to reclaim it, which took some of the upper depths, and it makes for a super interesting story because culturally, this place is big and it's important to dwarf history. There's a reason that they don't let go of it. It's because it is a core component of what makes them who they are. The most important of the ancestor gods, the only woman that is clearly marked out again and again and again, Valea, founded this hold. This is her hold. This is the hearth and home of all dwarves, and it's lost. And it stands as a great metaphor for what dwarfs are. It's also lost, like most of the dwarfs. Their entire kingdoms are cracking and crumbling. They need to reclaim this for their lost pride. And in some respects, it doesn't actually matter if they were ever going to do it or not, because the whole species is doomed because they have to do it. They can't let go. And that's largely their end time story as well. So what do we have in terms of what's useful? Fuck all.
Yeah, Belagar's there.
Eternal War.
Pretty cool.
But Eternal War.
It's Eternal War. If you like the endless conflict of Dwarf, Skaven, and Greenskin, if you love that story, that dynamic, that hardcore throwdown of Queek versus Skarsnik versus Belagar.
Yeah.
Maybe this is S tier. I mean, it is the hold with the most stories by far. It has so much written about it because it's such an interesting place.
And everyone passes by here at some point because it's fucking Karak 8 Peaks. It is the place to be. It's an awesome location, but we're not rating awesome locations. Because this is an awesome location. Tons of great stories happen here. We're rating dwarf holds. And this is about the least dwarf holding you can get for a dwarf hold. It's barely held together by a few dwarfs at the top clinging on as the great powers that be all around them attempt to basically eject them. It's not a great place to be.
Yep. caught up on some super chats real quick. Gorfang seems like David Parker Ray of Orcs. Great, more references I don't understand. Thank you. The Carl, dwarf fertility rate seems like a recent change. I don't see how you build an empire that size with such a low fertility rate. If you have safe homes and your children are much more likely to make it to adulthood, your population will grow.
And their fertility rate isn't in question. It's the nature of how they breed. Who's to say they're not fertile?
Now, it's always, I will say, when you read through it, it always comes off much more like a cultural problem as opposed to a physical, biological problem.
Yeah, there's definitely something going on with the dwarves.
Get your votes in quick because we're gonna have to. We're trying to keep moving here. Sticks and Stone. Is there Kozilid words for Lustria and Jungle? Yes. Are they written? I don't think so.
I reckon Lustria probably is somewhere.
Yeah, I
somewhere.
They're not in the Kozilid dictionary. That is in the back of Grudge Lore.
Let's be honest with the Kozilid dictionary is deeply lacking in tons of words that have been added to Kozilid.
Oh yeah,
like deeply lacking.
So I would say
feel like I should be able to fish that from somewhere. I'm gonna have a good think about that one, but I think the answer is no.
Yeah. Is Andy closer to a Dawi than an elf?
That's an interesting question. It depends entirely on what you mean by closer. If we're talking in height, no, I'm closer to an elf. Your average elf sits around about 6'4", and I'm 6'1" in a bit. So I'm closer in height. In mentality, probably closer to a dwarf. Because dwarves are.
I don't know about that.
yeah, fair point.
I don't know about that.
I don't know. The dwarves are of the two species probably more human, but I am an eternal child, which is kind of elven in of itself. So let's say I sit somewhere in between.
Yeah, almost like a human.
Yeah.
Tier list of World War II Soviet cities, Stalingrad. Yeah, that's basically Karaz.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the dwarves are sitting in the chair with 8 peaks. I'm not gonna answer that. We're gonna move on from that. You moving on. All right, that is time. Oh man, y'all are rude to Carrick 8 peaks. Y'all are rude to Carrick 8 peaks. It's
not rude, it's fair.
It is. Gack.
I'm quite right too.
Sorry, I forgot the I forgot the most important thing. It has to have an exclamation mark.
Exclamation mark, yeah, absolutely. Do you disagree?
No, it's correct. Like Carrick 8 Peaks, to be very clear, if I was being like really technical, it shouldn't be on this list. That's how bad it is.
Yeah.
It's a terrible place.
Yeah, bluntly, this is accurate. It is correct. It's not a dwarf hold. And we're rating dwarf holds. As it currently stands, it is an encampment.
Yeah.
That's the best way to describe it.
It's a staging ground. It's a war camp.
It's a war camp. It's not a hold. If they manage to take more of it, then sure. But they haven't. So this is a really good result. I completely agree with it.
And spoilers, they don't.
Spoilers, they do not.
All right, moving on. Next up, we have a good old Kennakiern, the Hornhold. So Kennakiern is the largest dwarf hold in the Black Mountains, which is the mountain range that separates the Empire from the Border Princes, or if you prefer to think of it this way, the Western dwarf holds from the Eastern dwarf holds. Mm-hmm. Kennakiern has been around for a good while. By dwarf standards, it's still considered a young kingdom. Yeah. But by human standards, it's been around for a hot minute. And it is a very unique hold in that it's one of the only... Oh, boy. Hold on, we have a brief interruption. Carrick 8 Peaks to D tier. The ancestors won't stand for this. We will retake the home of Valea. And so, just like a true Dawi would, it's not a back. It's worth taking back. It doesn't matter how many people die. We're taking it back.
Thank you, appreciated.
Yeah, thank you. We really appreciate that, and good for you on defending the dwarf's pride there. Every long beard is nodding in approval. I like how he didn't. I like how he didn't pick it up to like S tier. He's just like, no, just get it out of Ugak.
That's why I was laughing. It's perfect.
Karak A Peaks has been retaken. What a champ. All right, so Karak here. So the reason it's called the Hornhold, and easily its coolest feature, is that there is actually a natural formation within the hold itself where there's this great winding set of tunnels that when the wind blows through the mountains, the dwarves have also added to it and constructed so they're able to control the flow of air now, where it actually, so
I'm bringing it up, even if you're not. I'm bringing it up because it's a good point. Hello, Lorebeards. Hello, Many Media 2011. If you guys would do a tier list for the kingdoms of the Elgi, the High Elves, I would be infinitely grateful. The lore of those videos is unmatched. You can't get anywhere else.
Oh, I know.
You're the best. I watch endless hours of Lorebeards every week. No, we didn't.
No, we did the Phoenix Kings, not
we did the Phoenix Kings. We did not do the Elven Kingdoms.
Oh, so, right. Your money has touched my heart.
I mean, if you're gonna make a pitch like that, how can I not say thank you first? Massively appreciated, not just because of the compliment, which is deep and well received, but also because hey, we like to be able to pay our bills. So thank you very much. And yeah, let's add that to the list because I think it's a good one.
I'm putting it on right now.
Good. It is a good topic, and it's one that it's an interesting topic because the High Elves are often reduced to just 2 or 3 places, and the other ones. And it would be good to dive into, say, for example, Tiranoc, and have a good discussion about what Tiranoc is, and what it is represented as. Because let's be honest, unlike the dwarves, where we get pretty much named important characters for everywhere, the elves, they don't. They just
it's an interesting dynamic, but we don't have time. But yeah, it's on the list. We try and only do one tier list a month, so expect this in January.
It'll come eventually. But thank you very much for that.
Yeah, thank you. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
All right, so anyway, back to Karak here. So they've got this natural formation that the dwarves have added to with engineering to take advantage of, and basically what they've created is a horn the size of a fucking mountain. So the dwarves are able to pull a set of like levers and pulleys and stuff that causes the air to flow through in a certain way that it goes brrr, and like the mountain shakes, and it's the loudest horn in the world that we know of. And it's huge and is really fucking cool. And they actually use it to great effect. It's used for various types of signals, and they're able to control like the pitch and certain kinds of noises that it makes. So it actually allows them to communicate over very, very large distances with various groups of scouts or armies, and actually has allowed Karak here to be surprisingly on top of a lot of things that are going on in what is a very busy part of the world. Karak here is very close to Blackfire Pass, as well as everything going on with like the Border Princes and the Southern Empire. And when there's like big stuff going on, which almost always ends up going through Blackfire Pass, Karak here is usually up to their beards in it.
Yeah, it's a weird one, this one. So Karak Hearn is in a pretty prime location. It's on an important pass, a pass that's used by Tamarkin, actually, to get into the Empire. It's actually quite far away from Blackfire Pass. It's like a couple 100 miles. It's really far. It's not that close. And if you can just have a look there, you see Blackfire Pass is up closer to Karak Varn, the Blackfire Fort beside it, and Mount Blackfire there. But Karak Hearn is right down in that little bit in the very south of the Empire, in the very south of Visenland. And it's weird because fuck all, really, in comparison to some other holds, is written about it, given its enormously influential potential position. It sits on a mountain pass. It's got this really cool detail. That's it. It's surprisingly lacking in cool. It's surprisingly lacking in the detail it should have, because look where it is.
Yeah, so one or two things I want to add is that Karak Hearn has a really weird history in Games Workshop writings, as being very close to where something important happens, but they kind of miss out on it. For a good example being the
Every
Tarmakon
time.
invasion.
Yeah.
Like the Tarmakon invasion, Karakir gets actively talked about, but Tarmakon avoids it because he doesn't want to fight them.
Dwarves, no.
Yeah, because of that big fucking horn. Like it would ruin the element of surprise because they could communicate so easily, so they go around them. But one of the things about Karakir that I will say the old world very lovingly has brought up Karakir, and they do feature in Cetra's invasion. They actually play a pretty big role in Cetra having to hold them off while he's attacking the border princes and fighting his way through, which is fun. And they send down various groups to harass the undead while hanging out in the back a little bit. But the thing that Karakir is actually the most famous for, funny enough, besides the horn, is that it is a hold of tradition. Karakir currently is led by King Alric Ranulfson, who rather bizarrely is kind of what made the hold such kind of a big deal, because in the 6th edition Dwarf book, he was one of 2 special characters you could play with. Yeah. Your options were Thorgrim Grudgebearer, or actually, no, it wasn't Thorgrim, it was Thoric, right?
Thoric,
it was,
I think.
Yeah,
Isn't it Ironbrow?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think it was Thoric, Ironbrow, and
I'm pretty
King
sure
Alric Ranulfson. And he was just this really cool king that you got on shield bearers, who was just like a fun little badass. And it was kind of weird because Thorgrim wasn't a playable character that edition. Like he gets talked about, but he wasn't playable, didn't have rules. But Auric was. But the big thing that they delve into with him and his hold is that Karakir is staunchly traditional when it comes to matters of warfare. So they don't like black powder weapons. They just don't like them. They think it's newfangled nonsense that dishonors the ancestors, which is, there's something I actually really like about this little bit of storytelling for them, because what it comes off as is that this is a hold that's kind of embarrassed at how young they are. And so they deeply, desperately cling to making themselves seem ancestral by saying, well, we don't use black powder, that's too new. We use crossbows, grudge throwers, and bolt throwers, and that's it. Organ guns, get out of here. Gyrocopters, get out of here. They're very prideful.
Yeah, prideful, tradition-based, a young hold. In the greater scheme of holds, this one is a young hold without the great legacy of the past. And it's also, in terms of where it is and what it should be, arguably a super important one, but somehow it isn't. It holds a pass directly into Tilia, far easier in the River of Echoes that flows underneath the vaults and connects through to Tilia. You go through Carrickern and then over the Dawi Pass, strangely enough, named after the dwarves. And there's also Black Maiden Pass over into Tilia as well, not far away from the Black Gulf. And both of those pass over, and the main route to them is through Carrickern. And the Winter's Teeth Pass barely gets a mention anywhere. The trade that goes through there barely gets a mention. It just here or there pops up. Miragliano, however you want to pronounce it, has more mention with the River of Echoes through the vaults than Carrickern does. Almost as if they're separating themselves and they don't want to be a part of this greater world. They'll live by their own merits. They'll watch from outside and blow their horn whenever they see something bad. And it's a funny old hold because of, in many respects, its lack of interesting detail. It is, however, in terms of a hold position, directly involved with, without any mention, tons of big events, because this is the last point that Cetra reaches before he then tries to pierce through and gets like a few footholds into what would one day become the Empire. But this is where he stops. This is where many a greenskin invasion has passed through. What happened? Dunno. But we definitely know that they passed through here. This is where Tamarkan passed through. What happened? Well, he just ignored them. They appear to be the hold of bolting up, putting up the walls, and just sitting there saying, you get too close, we'll blow our horn at you. And not the hold of going out and doing dwarfy stuff. Look at it. It's right on the pass with Barak Var. Barak Var is huge. It's mentioned in every other book. Carrickern is not. So this is a hold that we know surprisingly little about. Is it rich? Has it deep veins of mineral? Does it have old stories of dragons beneath it? Has it got an old grudge with the greenskins that definitely live under there? Has it got problems with the Skaven? Because the Skaven are super fucking close. Like, super close. This is a primary route for Skaven. We don't know. But we do know the Hornhold still stands. So this is a difficult one for you to rate. And in some respects, when we've had difficult ones in the past, you've always gone, it's in the middle then. But is it even that? We don't know. You might have to spin your own tale. So on this one, when you vote, if you can, drop in chat why you're voting what you voted. So if, for example, you're voting at an A, tell us that it's because you think of the great Skaven wars that they've had there that you think kick ass, and name that Skaven warlord. If you think it's a D because Greenskins have kicked it in multiple times, tell us the name of that warlord. Or just say, Greenskins kick them in, they're rubbish, it's a D. Whatever suits you to justify your decision for this, because if you do that, you'll already have probably told a better story than Games Workshop has with the Hornhold.
Yeah, honest to goodness, its biggest featurette was that Alric Reynoldson somehow was one of 2 featured special characters for an entire edition, and got his own mini, and he got a really cool story that fleshed out the hold and established its traditionalism. And that was kind of it.
And that was it. Yeah, we didn't get anything really big and deep about them. It's a bit unfortunate.
Fourth edition added some cool stuff, and the old world is messing with Karakir, which is nice.
Which is good. It's really good, because hopefully we'll finally get a few extra new and interesting details.
Yeah, is it Karakir and Orc Slayer? No, because the hold in Orc Slayer is lost.
Yeah. It's been a while since I read Orc Slayer, though. I can't quite remember. Come on, Andrew, you should be able to remember this.
Yeah, no, I can't. Yeah, they also did get a fun little storyline in what supplement was that? Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th edition, Monuments of Reichland. They got a fun little storyline about defeating a big Tomb King Legion, which was cute.
It's just the same story again, though, isn't it?
Well, technically it's different. Well, this one goes into detail about how they defeated a king, and his Hydro Titan is trapped underground because the dwarfs like blew up a bunch of stuff underneath them. They all fell in, which was neat. Let's see. So
I voted B because I like their colors. Nice one,
Scallywag. That's a viable reason as any. That's a viable reason to vote that way. The Carl, sorry, following up the fertility rate, I mean by the number of offspring, not by their ability to have them. Similar idea to how East Asian countries do not have high fertility rates. Yeah,
well, we don't actually know how many kids they actually have.
Never gets that
because they really dodge around it. In fact, when it comes to the society the dwarves have, they are so averse to discussing the fact that men outnumber the women by such a large number and what that would mean for them as a society that you almost wouldn't know unless you think about it. And that's the only way for it to really understand how much of an impact it would have in their society. As it currently stands, we sort of don't know.
Oh, it is Karakir.
Is it in Orcslayer?
Yeah, which is very bizarre because the story kind of ends with the hold being basically dead.
Leveled, as I recall. I'd forgotten that. Okay, well, this makes for an interesting detail. I'm going to have to go back to Orcslayer. Okay, so I'm reassessing where I'm placing it because it got beaten up.
I mean, oh man, that opens a big old can of worms, especially because the ending of that story really doesn't work for a hold that's supposed to still be alive.
It doesn't. I haven't read Orcslayer for such a long time. And like, when was it released? It must have been around about 2011, 12.
Let's see. This was released
10?
in
because that was just about 2009, perhaps
2006.
Okay, so I read it 19 years ago. Holy crap! No wonder I don't remember it.
I mean, that would single-handedly make Karakir jump way up, in my opinion, because you have this super awesome story about like the horrible sleeper and the
jump way down because they're mid.
They're
not a hold anymore.
Yeah, it's part of the it's part of that kind of Storm of Chaos storyline. That's interesting. That's super interesting. I would love to go back and try and tie that into the modern. The modern.
I'm trying to remember. So Orc Slayer was set about 23. Is that right? 25, 23. So that's really late in the day.
Yeah, because it's post Archaon in the Storm of Chaos timeline.
Yeah. So Archaon 25, 22. So I think it was 25, 23 when Orc Slayer was set. I could be wrong on that. I am now going to have to go and check it. And then they obviously dumped the Storm of Chaos later.
Post, I think it was Nathan Long's first book because it's post the 17-year time gap.
Yeah. Which didn't make sense.
No, it makes no sense at all.
No sense at all. I mean, no sense. I mean, the whole book and for its timeline is a bit broken. No, that's super fascinating. I am now very intrigued. So the Hornhold is in Orc Slayer. Holy crap.
I can make that work. I can make that work.
I mean, it's really late in the day. I mean, when the timeline itself doesn't make sense, it makes it a lot easier to massage it anyway, because the book has to be massaged.
Technically it's an alternate universe anyway, so it's whatever. But okay, anyway, we gotta keep moving.
We do.
Unfortunately, as much as I would love to ramble on about Orc Slayer. Me too. So it was actually very close, but the winner was C.
C, just.
It was between C and B.
Take that one out. Let's add that up.
I think
I mean, it's a clear C there. So is it better or worse than Karaz? Well, it's gone. So I think, given that the latest revelation, it kind of has to be at the bottom, don't you think? Because it's barely a hold anymore.
I mean, I guess, but like it's still functioning as a hold, and like I find it more interesting than Karaz.
No, Karaz has loads of cool stories. It's just they're a bunch of idiots.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, okay. I'll put it below.
Karaz doesn't really have a lot of interesting stories, except for Nathan. Thanks very much, Nathan, coming along and sacking the place.
Yeah, I thought
I'm going to have to read Orc Slayer again. I can barely remember it. I'm going to have to tell Lindsay to go do that in book club or something.
Yeah, I would have sworn it wasn't because the ending is so dour.
Yeah, me too. Like I had forgotten entirely. So thanks very much, chat, for bringing that up, because I had forgotten.
All right, next up, this one's going to be kind of short and sweet, but we'll go over it.
It is.
We got Karaz Izor because, I wanted to grab a major hold from each of the little mountain ranges. And Karaz Izor, most notably, is a big old mountain, is the big hold in the vaults, which the vaults are like that southern area south of the Gray Mountains and to the west of the Gray Mountains. And or because they're kind of in that like the vaults in the Appuccini Mountain ballpark, but this is the Copper Hold, and if you can't tell from the name, they have a ridiculous amount of veins of iron, copper, tin, some of the deepest and most productive mines out of many of the it said the deepest and most productive mines outside the World's Edge Mountains. The bad news is that none of these metals are considered to be very valuable by dwarf kind. This is not a wealthy hold. In the grand scheme of things, it is a fairly poor hold. Now, that being said, they do have surprisingly impressive defenses. Karaz Izor is noted is that it's surrounded by a bunch of valleys and chasms that are so fucking hard to navigate that Karaz Izor very, very rarely faces any form of invasion. Because they sit right at this like junction point between various mountain ranges. So like the fault lines are really deep and really messy. So they've been able to dig down really, really deep. And approaching them from overland or even from underground is just exceedingly difficult. So they've had a level of isolation that has allowed them to be very, very successful in spite of being a kingdom that kind of started off as mostly a group of a bunch of exiled clans, many from the Dragonback range, who lost the mines at Ekrend and everything.
Mines of Ekrend.
Yeah, but they it's notable for being one of, unlike many dwarf holds, which used to have impervious defenses, but then the time of woe happened, the big earthquake and everything, which cracked them open. Karaz Izor was built later, but built very well, and built situated amidst all these like valleys and glaciers. And it's known for being one of the most difficult holds to get to the point that it's considered basically impenetrable by modern standards, which is impressive.
Yep. Yeah, this is actually quite a fine hold, but again, another one with very little in the way of any real detail.
Unfortunately.
Now, so that we can try and get into our minds what we're dealing with here. The Warhammer world is bigger than the real world. We often forget this because we look at the map and we go, hey, look, we're just in Europe, aren't we? Nah, we're not. We're in Warhammer Europe. And Warhammer Europe is Warhammer Europe dialed up to 11, meaning that everything's a bit bigger. And the vaults are the biggest mountains outside of the world's edge. And the world's edge are bigger than the Himalayas in terms of height, meaning that the vaults are basically Himalayan in height. They're really, really big. And they're really cold. And they're really big. And this hold sits in the middle of it in an almost impenetrable position. And that gives a story that in the greater scheme of Warhammer is not really that interesting because it doesn't fight much. And that's where most of Warhammer's tales tend to spin from.
Yeah,
but I will counter that with that's bullshit. Because it's right in the very heart of Skaven territory, right by Festerpike, not that far away from White over there.
So many major Skaven settlements here.
Yeah. This is right in the heart of Skaven territory. So the truth of their position is that they are probably in a state of almost eternal defense, warfare, and watching. Whilst their hold may not be the richest nor the largest in the world, they're probably fighting Greenskins and Skaven on a nightly basis almost. For all they are impenetrable. They're impenetrable because they've not been beaten yet. And I think that tells at least something of interest there. They're, other than that, a hold that exists.
So I do want to note two extra things about them that's mentioned in the army books that I find actually very interesting. So one of them is that Karaz Izor is said to have actually managed to successfully establish a series of underground tunnels connecting with the other dwarf mines and holds in that part of the mountains. Yep. And that they are somehow successfully pursuing they're successfully pursuing a project to connect their hold to the underway, which is hilariously ambitious because if you don't know, the underway doesn't even go through the Grey Mountains. So that means they are trying to dig a tunnel all the fucking way through the Grey Mountains to connect to the underway in the World's Edge Mountains, which through their part of the mountains on their way to connect to Karak has been going very, very successfully. But it seems that likely because I think a lot of what the hold relies on that makes it interesting but doesn't get explored as well as it should is because it's kind of situated where three mountain ranges slam into each other. It seems that the way the earth is built up around them, even coming at them from an underground perspective, is so much more difficult than it normally is because the earth is so
this is a classic crunch point in the tectonic plates. Clearly, where they're pushing upwards, they are the Himalayas, and all those fault lines are something that the dwarves are uniquely positioned to take great advantage of all the species of the Warhammer world. They know stone unlike anybody else. And better than anyone else. So it's a great hold in terms of defense. It's a great hold in terms of its future prospects. It's dwarfiness succeeding. They are expanding out slowly and taking advantage of what they have. And whilst other holds in the area aren't doing anywhere near as well, they're doing all right. They're not rich because the metal seams that they have are not the richest seams. They're not the best defended because they don't have the best engineers. They don't have the best anything really. It's just a place. And it's a relatively successful dwarfy place.
The funniest thing about them is one of their biggest lore notes is that Karaz Izor is actually one of the most famous prominent holds in Blood Bowl.
Yeah, that's always a funny one. The Prospectors, is that the name? Is it
Karaz Izor Prospectors?
They're Prospectors,
They're one of the best teams in the Talayan League.
Funny. I mean, that shows you how often Izor's used, doesn't it?
Yeah, unironically, I think of all the dwarf holds we know of, I think they're like the second or third most famous dwarf team in Blood Bowl, which is very funny.
It's pretty hilarious.
At least in one reality, they're popular. Okay, polls up. Get your votes in, please. Tag, slight spoilers. One of the best part of Orc Slayer is in the opening. Gojek is launched via a Bretonian ship catapult onto an Orc pirate ship and Slaughter's home ship. Yeah, Orc Slayer.
It's a classic piece of Nathan Long writing.
Yeah, Orc Slayer is a hoot. It is very fun. It's probably, honest to goodness, it's probably one of the best horror Gotrek and Felix stories.
Surprisingly.
Yeah, it is. It's a bummer. It is a bummer of a book, but the moments are super duper fun. Elemental exposure. Nurgle to S. Oh, wait. Wrong screen? Screw it. Nurgle to S tier.
Yeah, can you add Nurgle and put them in at the bottom?
I guess I'm adding Nurgle. Let me look. Oh my god.
Oh, you made me laugh, Elemental Exposure. I needed that.
Oh my good lord. I don't know how he got here. I mean, his hatred for dwarfs is beyond infamous.
Ratings tier streams are always funny. They always make me smile.
I thought the Chaos Gods was over, but it never ends.
That stream just never, ever comes to an end.
It will be with us. We're gonna die. Like we're gonna be at me and Andy's funerals. We're gonna be there, and Elemental Exposure is gonna walk up as an old man to our coffins and go, "Nurgle to S tier." We'll just put in our coffin with no context for any friends or family that might be around. To their horror, who is that guy? Oh my good
Holy
lord!
Crap. Anyway, so how's the vote doing? So at the moment, 2 minutes in, about a third of you have voted, something like that. Yeah, about a third. And we have a very clear favor. We'll leave out for about an extra 30 seconds as Sotek finishes off, or Sotek, sorry, Ryan. Mr. Ryan.
Alright, Lorebeards, will it dispossess clans? Does that make it one of the most best populated holds of the Ankor, rivaling the Great Holds? I don't know if I'd say...
Sadly, no.
Yeah.
I mean, its population has dropped as, again, we're running off my memory here this time. As I recall, about 50,000, which is not one of the biggest holds. Indeed, it's not even that large in the great scheme of cities.
In the most recent book, let's see, the quote is 7A. Yeah, so from Lords of Stone and Steel, it's been bumped up to 80,000.
Okay, that's a little bit more healthy. Even 80,000, though, isn't enormous in the greater scheme of Warhammer populations. We are dealing with a world that's far bigger than the real world. And some of the population numbers, you would have the bigger cities, ones rivaling Constantinople.
I'm going to call that one. It looks like chat's made up your mind. So, Kennegaizor goes right up into B tier.
Into B tier. So, I think that's fair. It's a solid hold. It really is. It's a solid hold. It's not one of the best holds the dwarves know. Indeed, many dwarves look over it.
Exile one says, "No, Nurgle to Umgak. The ancestor gods deny you your prize,
we can't
demon."
escape the chaos scheme.
Fuck the dwarves. Who cares about dwarves? Who cares about dwarves? Nobody cares about dwarves. Oh, chaos, baby.
Oh shit. Oh, I needed a cheering up today, and that's really cheered me up.
I can't wait for Zinchkorn and Slanesh to show up here in a little bit, apparently. Good God. Yeah, I think B is reasonably fair. I do think Karaz definitely has some unfair advantages from that. It's what details it does have are very flattering to it. But it also, I think, is genuinely built in a very interesting place that allows it to have kind of a unique story. And I do like the idea of a newer dwarf hold that is being very successful despite not being wealthy. I do think that makes for a genuinely interesting tale of dwarfs being perhaps even ashamed of their home because they perceive it as poor, when in fact they're doing the best out of many.
They're doing really well, yeah. Because clearly they're not besieged, but they are embattled and they are successful with it. They have held everyone off.
Thank you both so much, by the way. Thank you very much.
Enormously appreciated. They clearly are in a good position, even though they are geographically in a terrible position, with not just a weak set of seams of ore, but also a weak position in terms of all the bad guys that just want to kick them in for even existing. Yet still, they're doing pretty well. So, yeah, I think this is an entirely fair rating. And I think there are many who, for example, people in, say, Karak Azgraz or in Karak Kurn, be really disappointed by that outcome, but I think it's fair.
Next up, we have
That's the big one.
Karak Kadrin, the Slayer King. So Karak, I mean, hell, what can you say about Karak Kadrin? What a famous hold. But also infamous in equal measure. Karak Kadrin being the most famous of the northernmost holds, the best surviving northernmost hold, outside one we'll get to in a little bit. Karak Kadrin, of course, is a very, very military focused hold. They watch over Peak Pass, which is one of the most trafficked ways to get from the Darklands into the Empire. And there are many different forces, some good, most bad, that attempt to use this pass to go about their various misdeeds. Though there are good people that try to use it for trade caravans and other such like that. But at the end of the day, Karak Kadrin is a very warrior-focused hold that has built itself up around Slayer culture due to kind of the curse of the Slayer Kings. This is a hold who its fate was kind of decided many hundreds of years ago, when the first Slayer King happened after his daughter was tragically eaten by Skaladrak Incarnadin, and they kind of just never been able to get over it. But unlike Karak Azul, which became a hold deprived of joy, and the wound is very fresh, and it's led in many ways to a dour downturn for their hold, Karak Kadrin has only grown in power. It is a very powerful hold. Also, it has one of the largest shrines to Grimnir in the world, if not the largest.
It's the largest.
And this is a hold that is not scared to throw the fuck down with pretty much anybody, especially Chaos.
Yeah, Karak Kadrin, or Kadrin if you prefer. This one's pretty easy to sum, but it's more difficult to go into depth with, because we've got ourselves a hold that doesn't have a great storied history. This is not one of the great holds of the dwarves, but it is a modern great hold. When it became the Slayer hold, its entire character changed. Beforehand, it was a hold on Peak Pass, and a hold that had held Peak Pass for a long time. And because of its unique position, it's not on the biggest mountain, it's not in the most impressive vein even in the local area. What it is in a very defensible position. Indeed, it even has a sky bridge, not a very large one, but a sky bridge that leads into the main gates at the front. So even that's really difficult to get over. And we're not even talking about the fortifications that lie underneath.
Oh yeah, getting to the front door of Karak Kadrin is actually borderline impossible.
It's really tough. But the hold itself isn't that big in the greater scheme of holds. It's not as impressive as the other big holds. However, that all changed when it became the Slayer hold, or the Slayer Keep, whatever you wish to call it. When it got a Slayer King, a king who was caught between the two conflicting oaths, the oath of the Slayer and the oath of kingship, and how they are incompatible, yet nevertheless both must be obeyed. The oath of kingship, which means he has to stay alive to lead his people for as long as possible, and the oath of the Slayer, which means he has to seek a glorious death like Grimnir before him. And that conflict brought the hold into a very different place, because the Slayer King almost became king of the Slayers, to somehow balance off this strange place that he found himself in. And this continues for centuries and centuries and centuries as the oath is passed from one king to the next as it's not properly fulfilled. And that makes for an interesting tale. So if you're looking for interesting tales, we have one. It also changes the nature of Karak Kadrin completely. Beforehand, it's just a mid-tier hold. This is not an impressive place. Totally mid-tier, sitting on a nice trading point, protecting it. But now it becomes a center of the Slayer cult, which means it's a center of drunkenness, disorderliness, awfulness. The other dwarves hate the place. It's seen as undwarfy, unacceptable, and uncool, because nobody likes the Slayers. Nevertheless, it gives the Slayer Keep its own character. Going there, it's just different. The biggest shrine to Grimnir. There's both a respect to Grimnir and also a respect to Slayers that you don't find almost anywhere else in the Karak-Ankor at all. Grimnir, I mean, he's still not accepted. The whole Slayer thing is still not a good thing, but it's far more accepted because there's so many of them here. And it's also meant that when it comes to times of war, the Slayer Keep is in a prime position to provide a hell of a lot of support. Not because they're dwarves and they want to support, but because they're Slayers and they want to die and they go to war, which changes the nature of Karak Kadrin completely. This is a dwarf fort that goes to war and doesn't want to basically batten down the hatches and hide like so many of the other dwarf kings do. They're always outward looking and looking for the next big thing they can do, which might make you go, well, surely Karak Kadrin's in a bad place then. Well, sort of no. Because the Slayer King has his conflicting oaths where he's also got his oath of kingship, so he has to lead his people well. So he does everything in his power to keep as many of them as alive, including himself, as he can. Which means that we have ourselves a unique center of Slayers that train Slayers, that makes Slayers better, and, contrary to the Slayer oath, also does everything it can to keep them alive while giving them every opportunity to fulfill that oath. So it makes it an interesting dichotomy for the Slayers themselves of positions, and that's cool. It's an interesting tale about Slayers. It does mean, though, that surely this hold must have fallen at some point, because most have, at some point or another, fallen one way or another and been rebuilt or repurposed. Never. Karak Kadrin, in the previous wars, it held out. Even in the depths of the Goblin Wars, it held out. And then since the point of being the Slayer Keep, well, you would imagine now it's going to fall. If anything, it's become stronger. The population increased. It's still not as big as it was during the Golden Era, but the population of Karak Kadrin is now big. It's a central trading point, and it makes use of it, and they patrol the shit out of that pass. They're up and down that all over the place looking for a fight. So in many respects, they're doing something that the rest of the Karak-Ankor don't do, and that's Dwarven Outreach. Unfortunately, Dwarven Outreach means having to deal with Slayers, drunkards, absolute worst examples of dwarf kind who hate themselves with a passion. Don't think of Slayers as cool. They're not. They suck.
No,
and they think they suck. They're awful. And just look how much Gotrek hates himself. Think about that multiplied by 1,000 up and down that pass. They do not make good neighbors at all. But at the same point, they make brilliant neighbors if you're invaded. Because suddenly there's Slayers coming down the pass, effectively coming like Gandalf down the mountainside, ready to attack anything that happens to be there. And they're really close to a host of big goblinoid centers, including Red Eye Mountain, just to the north. Again, another fallen dwarf hold. So this hold it's a fascinating place, but it is not rich. It's doing okay. It is militarily, it's kind of idiotic, but it has won most of its fights. It's a weird up and downy one. It's not the most populous. That's the other holds down in the south. But it's got a pretty strong population. It's also really far away from the other dwarves and has almost lost its connection in some respects to the other dwarven kingdoms. They're still connected, but they're Slayers, which means the other dwarves do not want anything to do with them. And that's an easy thing to forget. So take all of that into mind.
Pulls up.
Because this is a city that many of you might immediately go, well, clearly it has to be yes. Does it? Take a little think about it. Because this place, if you're doing it on dwarfiness, this is one of the least dwarfy holds you will find. Because it does things in a way that other dwarfs do not like.
True.
It's focused on the cult of the Slayer, an entire cult that dwarfs despise and outcast. There is a bigger story here than potentially the automatic S that many of you will first think.
That being said, Ungrim Iron Fist is pretty fucking cool.
I mean, yes, we're not rating the kings, we're rating the holds.
True. With the polar gates being made out of Grumrul, how much does Grumrul come down in meteorites to the surface? I mean, Warpstone comes down all the time.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it comes down like crazy often. Every once in a while, there will be a meteor that crashes down, but all of the Grumroll that is buried deep in the earth, most of it came down, especially closer to the surface. A lot of it came down during the Cataclysm. And so it's like centered in craters or parts of mountains that were punched out, or in like lakes, like the Blackwater has a ton of Grumroll around it because it's where a big old piece came down and slammed into the mountains and helped create a lot of that lake.
I mean, it's often referred to as star metal. There's a reason it's referred to as that. It does come from the sky. Most of the primary veins have come from the sky. So the answer is, how often does it come? I mean, it's not often. It's a long time ago that happened. A long time ago. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't come down. There's a reason Warpstone comes down. It's because there's a giant chunk of it orbiting the world. There is not a giant chunk of handy Grumroll, unless, of course, it's inside that Warpstone chunk, which is very likely.
It's actually extremely likely. It's very likely that a lot of the Warpstone that comes down is crystallized around a chunk of
it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of Warpstone has bits of star metal in the inside of it.
There's how many regular human soldiers is the military equal to? Is the military equivalent to an average elf or dwarf lore-wise?
So that's a fascinating question, because when it comes to the battle
30
game,
minutes, just
yeah, exactly. When it comes to the battle game, that's why I'm not going to dive into it. The answer is they're almost 1-to-1. Generally 2 humans to an elf, approximately 2 humans to a dwarf. Just points alone. 6 points versus 9 points, 1.5 humans. It depends on which edition of the game you're going with. But when it comes to the lore, it's almost the opposite. Elves go, dwarves go, humans die, unless they're named characters where they just seem to go on forever. Humans have this weird thing where they happen to be the peak that no one else can quite achieve, but the vast majority of them are shit. And that's largely where it sits. But broadly, it's difficult to drop it down into simple numbers. And this is a topic that I think we could probably go into, which is the difference between lore and game.
Yeah, one of the best examples I can give you is actually one of the best examples of what an elf should actually be like. Go watch the Warhammer Mark of Chaos trailer and see how fucking terrifying that one elf is.
Wow, that was a while back. Mark of Chaos.
Yeah, that trailer is one of the best showcases of what a Warhammer elf is actually like. And then, oh no, Necro player, thank you. Add Zarnagran and put it in S tier for the Great Hashut and his
but
children.
We already put Azul sitting at like B or something, didn't we?
You can't say that. You can't say that. Get your votes in for Katrin while I Hawk, could you make me a quick, I know you're here, could you make me a quick thing? I apologize and thank you. Apparently the Chaos Doors had to interrupt the party.
I am massively amused.
All right, Katrin is S tier.
Zarnagran, that's just the fucking best. So what do you think? Is it S tier?
In my personal opinion, no.
No.
I would put Katrin at A tier personally, because I think of its relevance to like the wider dwarf community and how it's catapulted up. But I think in the grand scheme of dwarfdom, it has some deep, tragic, terrible flaws.
Yeah, I agree completely. Karak Kadrin, if it hadn't been the Slayer Keep, would be like a B probably. But it becomes the Slayer Keep. Its importance elevates and also drops massively. It's basically like having leper towns sitting up at the northern part of the cities. So do you want to go to Leper Town? No, because that's where lepers are, isn't it? Okay. Yeah, I don't want to go to Leper Town. And you might go, that seems unfair because they're not lepers. I mean, you can't really catch leprosy from them. Can't be a slayer. You know, leprosy is barely contagious at all. It's really hard to catch leprosy. It's Leper Town. And Leper Town is not somewhere that any dwarf wants to go unless they're forced to. And that's the issue. This is not a good dwarven hold. It's a fucking cool one. It's super cool. It's got a great story, but it's not a good dwarven hold. And if I'm rating dwarven holds, I easily drop that one at an A. And I could be persuaded to even drop it to B under some circumstances.
Next up, we have Karak Norn. So
Norn.
Karak Norn is the largest of the Grey Mountain dwarf holds. Karak Norn, well, allow me to translate its name for you. Its name literally translates as Barren Earth Hold. which is not an inspiring start. I'm
It's
going to
not
be
a good
honest.
start, is it?
The dwarfs of Karak Norn are often referred to as gray dwarfs, which many of the dwarfs of the Grey Mountains are, but they are notably known for this. And the reason they are called gray is because they have a very gray demeanor, meaning that they tend to be rather humorless and serious, even by dwarf standards, which is saying a lot. The dwarfs of Karak Norn, their life is a difficult one. They are fortunate enough to have a surprisingly well fleshed out hold now, because they were featured very heavily in the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th edition book Lords of Stone and Steel, which actually turned out to be a pretty good book, and added a lot of fun details. So they did get a lot of fleshing out. That being said, it's actually quite easy to sort of summarize what they are. Like we talked about earlier with Karagazgaraz and Karagaizor, they were mostly dwarfs that started off as refugees. They came primarily from Mount Silverspear, which was an incredibly wealthy hold further east in the Darklands that fell to Greenskins. So they migrated and ended up here, along with a bunch of other dwarfs that used to live in Mad Dog Pass and also got chased out. But they set up Karak Norn, which is while it is the largest hold in the Grey Mountains, it's not a very large hold. Yeah. It's surprisingly tiny despite that moniker, and it's a incredibly poor hold, especially for its size. It's a hold where, to make money, their younger dwarfs leave and they go work in like the Empire, or they mine in the hills of Stirland, or they go other places. They go into Bretonia. Like they go elsewhere to make their fortunes, because there is no fortune to be found in Karak Norn. Now, Karak Norn is defensible, and it does have a history, because here's the thing. Karak Asgaraz hates all elves. They hate all elves. Karak Norn hates wood elves. Oh, they fucking hate wood elves. And that is mostly because Karak Norn had the grave misfortune to be the first dwarf hold to actually discover that the Azrai were a thing. Where there was a big old fight between them and the Wood Elves, and they've been pissy about it ever since. They're so pissy about it that the Wood Elves have actually attempted to smooth over relations several times, to the point that the king of the Pine Crags, which is one of the kingdoms within Athaloran, actually went so far as to ride to the aid of the dwarfs of Karak Norn when they were being besieged and surrounded by greenskins. He saved them, killed all the greenskins, and then like went away. And at a later opportunity, he showed back up, and they were going to fight side by side with the dwarves. And the dwarves stopped what they were doing, turned to the side, and attacked the elves immediately.
I mean, yeah, it's an interesting setup, and in some respects, shows some of the worst inclinations of the dwarves, or alternatively, the worst inclinations of the writers concerning dwarves, where the honorable thing is to respect an ally who helped you, and their own personal honor would demand that they did something about it, but instead they betray their ally and they kill them, actively kill them. And this is a massive betrayal of honor. And it's a massive betrayal of what honor means. And it's an interesting setup, because it's telling you a story about what dwarven honor actually is, which is it's whatever they want it to be. And if they're pissy about something else, they will find the excuse to kill you, regardless of what individual honor suggests they should do. And in this particular case, the individual honor was quite clear, and they went against that and actively attacked them. A cool story, and how you judge that for dwarven personality is entirely up to yourself. The funny thing is going, ha ha ha, dwarves just hate elves so much. But then when you actually examine what they're doing, you go, ha ha ha, whoa. Aren't they the species of honor and loyalty? And wouldn't they, when confronted with an awfulness, I've got a grudge and my own personal honor demands that I have to be this, just turn their back and walk away and say, I can't cope with this. I can't because I've got two conflicting grudges. It's like the Slayer Oath and the Oath of Kingship. They conflict. You have to make both of them work. These dwarves didn't. They chose to ignore their personal honor and attacked. And that's cool because it's telling stories.
And I will say, I do think it's very interesting, probably unintentional, but very interesting that the Grey Mountain dwarves seem to be so deeply anti-elf. And it's because it's all the Grey Mountain dwarves.
And no great surprise in many respects because the Grey Mountains were lost. So badly. The dwarves barely hung on there. There's hardly any dwarves in the Grey Mountains at all in comparison to what there was before that war. And when you look to the Middle Mountains, which were also held by dwarves, the elves didn't attack them at all. Why? Because the Middle Mountain dwarves said, it's not our business. This isn't our war. Why would we be fighting against our allies? And that's really fascinating. When you then go over to the Grey Mountains, you find the ones who engaged with that war, and they are still, thousands of years later, utterly pissed. And they are so angry about whatever perceived slights they have that their own honor takes second place to their initial anger and grudge. And often that grudge is just not written down anywhere. There is no great book of grudges for many of these grudges because most of the holds were lost. And that's also fascinating. There's another example of one of the untold stories of the dwarves. And we're always looking for untold stories. It's one of the fun things about Lorebeards. We're always looking for the little gaps in the lore that no one's kind of filled in. And we have one here. How the hell do they have such a strong grudge? What caused it? Where is that grudge? Who's recorded it? Where exactly are the dwarves getting their information from? And when they find out that info, why are they so pissed? Because the results of it are deep.
Yeah, one of the things, a couple of other interesting things about them besides their notable, yeah, I know, we'll get to it in a second. One of the notable things besides their deep elf hate that is quite interesting is that Karak Norn, unlike Karak Asgaraz, so Karak Asgaraz, who we spoke about earlier, is very pro-human. They like humans. Karak Asgaraz always acts as a very neutral ground between the Empire and Bretonnia. They really don't like to take sides, and they often act as like a diplomacy state between the two of them. Karak Norn is not like that. And it's because Karak Norn, as you can see on this map, is actually positioned quite a bit further south than Karak Asgaraz is, because they've got Athel Loren in the way between them and Bretonnia, that whenever those wars have broken out, they side with the Empire every time.
Yep. Every time.
They do not give a fart in the wind about Bretonnia. And some other interesting things about them. This is a hold that has a lot of problems. While in that they so deeply want to have tons of tunnels and really delve into wealth and everything, but Karak Norn is notorious for having pretty bad luck when it comes to their tunnels. Of that, I think it says something like for every one tunnel they find that has like a vein of mineral wealth, they find 6 tunnels full of night goblins or Skaven.
Yeah.
And this is a hold that is deeply under assault almost all the time. Most of their wealth comes from the fact that they maintain a pretty serious and well-invested series of way stations that travel throughout the mountains that traders are able to use. So people mostly coming up from the Empire, sometimes coming up from a little further south. But Karak Norn is a hold that has, honestly, it's a rough place. Like, it is a dour, difficult place to live, even by dwarf standards.
Yeah. So there we go. Our summary of it is, it's in the Grey Mountains. It does not have any real wealth that's worth discussing on the dwarven level of wealth. Its people often leave because they need to find work. They're embattled on multiple sides. They hate elves with an almost ridiculous passion and have quite a number of relatively strong relationships with their nearby human neighbors. But beyond that, it's a hold.
Yep. So get your votes in real quick while we do this. Ricky Chapman had to step away for a bit to clean out some rat traps. A truly doughy duty.
You should go pay yourself a rat catcher next.
Yeah, the joys of rats. Ted Barrera. And yet, for all of Conrad's defenses, it only took a small handful of Chaos Dwarf artillery pieces to almost breach it. It also feels like it is a very somber undertone to me in its descriptions. It is. It is a somber hold. It's a somber, dark hold in many respects. Yeah, and to be fair, saying a small handful of Chaos Dwarf artillery pieces is kind of like saying, I fought a guy and he had a small handful of guns to my knife. Like it's a bit of a, you don't need that many for it to be a pretty severe threat. All right, that's enough time for that poll, so we're going to call it. It was close between C and D, but ultimately C's take it. I think that goes right to the bottom of C tier, but I think it is a fair C tier. Yeah, I think this is a pretty. And meanwhile, XL1 says Chaos Dwarfs to Ungak. Anyway, back to tacos. Thank you, XL1, for maintaining sanity. Maintaining sanity. Nurgle and Zardocker are now down where they belong. I think this is fair. It's one of the Grey Mountain holds, and the Grey Mountain holds are not well regarded anywhere. It's the biggest one. In many respects, it feels like it should be above Asgaraz. But it's got a whole host of problems that Asgaraz doesn't have. So for all Asgaraz is probably the smaller of the two, Karak Norn is in many respects diminishing, where at least Asgaraz is sort of maintaining its place. Yeah, I think this is fair. Yep. All right, next up, a hold of mystery. How are me and Andy going to try and spin this? We have Karak Zorn, the first hold, the forgotten hold. The lost hold of gold and gods. It's really real, honest. Yeah, it's totally a thing. It definitely exists. So for those that don't know, so Karak Zorn translates to a surprisingly simple name, which is quite literally just the hold of the upland plateau. Pretty simple, not overly glamorous. What is said is mostly myth. Everything we know about Karak Zorn is quite literally myth. Of that, it is said to have been the very first hold of the dwarfs. And it also is said to have an entrance to what is known as the Glittering Realm, which totally isn't just part of a spaceship of the old ones, where there was instructional tablets for the ancestor god that went down there and everything. But it's where the dwarfs, according to their own legends and myths, came from. It's where they originated from as they started to head up north into the world. One of the things that was actually kind of interesting in the novels is that in the novels for the War of Vengeance, they actually lay out a bit of plot that for apparently a good while, Karak Zorn supposedly was maintaining loose contact with the further northern holds for a time. But right before the War of Vengeance kicks off, a mysterious dwarf shows up claiming that he's the last survivor, and he mentions a whole bunch of stuff about how a bunch of horrible lizard beasts came in and killed them all. Which you go, oh, okay, like they were killed by lizardmen, maybe they got too greedy, yada, yada, yada. But spoilers for the War of Vengeance. Tune out for like the next 15, 30 seconds. It's then revealed later on that that dwarf that came up to tell them what happened to Karak Zorn isn't actually a dwarf. It's something I won't say exactly what it was. I'll just say it's something way worse and in disguise, which then implies that Karak Zorn, that Karak Zorn fell to something much more sinister. Or maybe there's a fragment of truth in why Karak Zorn fell, but maybe the dwarf's actual undoing was a series of chess moves by a far more sinister figure. In any event, the fall of Karak Zorn, we don't know what ended up destroying it. There are many dwarves who have attempted to find it over the years. Many of them believe it's this great city of gold that is the greatest. Gems in particular, because they have the greatest jewelers in all the dwarf realms. Yeah, and what artifacts they do have that have been handed down are said to be beyond legendary. Things that the ancestor gods themselves held, because all the ancestor gods are said to have come from there. And it's a place that many Dawi believe, particularly rune lords, that if they could find it, perhaps they would find the secrets to bringing the ancestor gods back, or at least finding many secrets of ancient rune lore and smithing and all of this stuff. Sadly, it was never discovered.
Yeah, loosely, my bit for this is going to be really short, which is probably good given the time. And that's this. It's El Dorado for dwarfs.
Yes, it is.
It is the great city of gold stroke gems. It is mythic. It probably doesn't exist. And it was destroyed by lizardmen or elves, if you listen to Gotrek. Gotrek, though, loves to blame elves for everything, so it probably wasn't elves.
Gotrek is a massive hate boner for elves.
He has a massive hate boner for elves. So what we have is barely a dwarf city at all in terms of something to rate. But what we do have is a fun myth for dwarfs, and that's cool. There's nothing wrong with a good myth. And the ties through to the Glittering Realm and the Lizardmen, and the fact that the Lizardmen maybe wanted to wipe the place out is super cool for story potential.
Yes, it is.
But what we have for a whole to rate is nothing for you. It probably is destroyed. So how you want to rate that is entirely up to you. If you want to just rate a myth, rate a myth. If you want to rate a living, breathing hold, this one is an easy umgak.
Yeah,
but
if you think it's just not real, it's easy umgak.
Yeah, quite. You can do whatever you wish with it, because after all, you're doing the voting, not us.
Yeah. But Total War Warhammer says, nope, it's totally real. And in our alternate universe, Thoric Highbrow fucking finds it. And is like, I'm building this place back up. And it's pretty cool. Yeah, we actually have more details on it from Vermintide and Total War than we do from any of the written material. Because for those that don't know, Barden, the dwarf character of Vermintide, his excuse for why he's left his hold, which I think he's actually from Carrick Norn. The reason he gives for having left his hold is that he's looking for Carrick Zorn. And if you play Vermintide 2, Carillion often nudges him about, you don't seem to be looking that hard for a hold that's definitely not in the Grey Mountains. But Barden did actually find some really fun information about myths about it, which are mostly contained in the Vermintide 1 lore journals for anyone that cares. So I'll give y'all just a couple seconds, like 30 more seconds, because this one's actually vaguely close. So get your votes in real quick on Carrick Zorn. I'll get caught up on super chats. Vintage Gaston. Ooh, Vintage Gaston.
No one fights like Vintage Gaston.
This act makes me think this is Slayer Hold. Yeah, talking about Carrick Norn. Yeah. Super Urlock. One thing that the Grey Dwarf's ancestors would have found evidence of what happened to the original settlers that is more easily exaggerated. That would make for a good story.
Yeah, I think there should be something in there, because why do they keep on hiking it into Athaloran? There must be something there that they want back. There must be. Or they wouldn't bother. Why waste your lives?
Yeah, you know what? I actually will pull up this comment because it's an interesting comment. Carrick Zorn is also shown the Old World Interactive map. It is, and whenever Games Workshop makes a map with Carrick Zorn, they always put it as a living hold, not a ruined hold.
Yeah.
They are very consistent about that, which is so mysterious. Colbain Manny. The best dwarf hold is clearly Karaz Bryn. Lots of cats and the best place in the old world to do the skeleton dance. Ah, yes, that place with that freaky pale lady who moved in and just so rudely has not left. She just keeps staying. She's the worst house guest the Dawi have ever had. Damn vampires. All right, I think that's enough time.
All right, we can call that one.
Umgak, they say. It's not real. What a ridiculous notion.
Or, it's been destroyed. Or, it doesn't matter, because it's not actually doing anything, and it's just one of those mystery boxes that Games Workshop like to tout every other edition of the game.
I think this is a very, very fair place.
Yeah,
I think it is perfect umgak.
Okay, so if the place exists and it's an active hold, it deserves to go in umgak for its absolute betrayal of all the other dwarves in not even bothering to reach out.
Yeah.
Unless they think that the other dwarves suck because they become completely caught up in their grudges to the point that they no longer think straight.
Ooh, wouldn't that be spicy? All right. Next up, it's time for Karaz.
Now, well, this is a much easier one.
The Everpeak.
Everpeak.
There is so much that could be said about Karaz. This is the capital. This is the big place. This is the heart of the Dwarf Empire. And for quite some time has been where most of its High Kings have resided. Contrary to what they accidentally said in the roleplay game, this is not where all the High Kings are from, just where some of them have been. But Karaz is built into one of the, I believe, the largest singular mountain in the World's Edge Mountains. And it's a big hold. Now, there is a tragedy in that it's not as occupied as it used to be. There are some parts of Karaz that are quite quiet these days. But Karaz has held out against so much. And it is still one of the most glorious places. Like, it's one of those places where if my brain could teleport into Warhammer Fantasy and I could explore a location, it would probably be in my top 10 list of that. It would be a genuinely beautiful place to explore. I
mean, this one's easy. I mean, let's just cut it down because look at the time. Okay,
True.
You ready?
True.
Here we go. It's the capital of the dwarves. It's the biggest city. It's got about 1 million dwarves in it at least. And that might just be the fighting dwarves. There might be as many as 4, 5, 6, or 7 million dwarves here. This hold has never fallen. It's where the High King is. It's where all the greatest shrines to the dwarves are. And yes, to give you an idea of how big Ankor used to be, this place is an echo chamber in comparison to what it once was. During the Golden Era, this place was unlike anywhere else. And to this day, it still is. It's extraordinary.
I always really love the note that they usually make about the, I think it's the Hall of 1,000 Pillars, which is just a part of Karaz in one particular level, is said to be so big that you could fit like a considerable portion of Altdorf just in that hall.
Yeah.
And it would fit with plenty of space. Like, it is a huge hold. Pulls up.
Yeah, this is one of the ones where it's not difficult to describe it for exactly what it is. It is the center of the Dwarven kingdoms, and it makes the other holds look like minuscule pipsqueaks by comparison.
I was honestly half tempted just to go SSSS.
Yeah, I mean, it almost wouldn't be fair, but we like to give you choice because if you've got your own reasons for saying no, fuck it, this is definitely not S-rated. Go for it, and do please share why you don't think it deserves to be at the top of the list.
And then call it mine. Oh man. But yeah, I mean, it's Karaz. What else can you say? Like, I'll give y'all.
I mean, it's also the oldest dwarf hold in Games Workshop's history. In that this one was there pretty much almost at first edition and has been there all the way through. Unlike all the other holds, which are basically newbies, new boys that were added much later as the maps slowly but surely became rare. Karaz, or as it was back then, Karaz with a C, has been there right from the very beginning. So yeah, this is pretty much the big hold.
All right, pulls up. It's what you think it is. We're not gonna drag it out. It was S tier. I'm slapping that right at the top.
90% S tier as well, and I think that's entirely fair. This is the center of dwarves, and in some respects, it almost makes a nonsense of the other holds because it's so big. You look at it and go, wait a minute, there's like, how many dwarfs there? Why are there so few everywhere else? Why don't just 100,000 go and retake that place? Why? Why haven't they? What's going on here? In some respects, makes a nonsense of the dwarfs and their entire situation. And then you look at the next hold down and you go, why is there only 20,000 there?
Yeah, it makes the numbers look stupid.
None of it makes sense. But the worst part of all is the numbers there are the only ones that really make sense. The rest of them are the ones that are weirdly causing problems.
How do you think an elf that visited Karaz for the War of Vengeance but came visited now would feel seeing how it changed? Probably very sad.
Yeah.
I think if you had an elf that was old enough that they remembered what it used to be and then they visited now, they would probably find it deeply tragic. And it would probably remind them a lot of home and make them even more sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Let's keep moving. We got two left.
Two left and almost no time. Now, this one's GT. Crackerjack. Okay, go for it.
So Krakadrak, also known as the major, the Dragon Hold, or the hold of the Norscan dwarves. It's the big hold of the Norscan dwarves. Now, this one's a little controversial because technically it was a ruined hold, and it's only just now being rebuilt after it fell to Valmir Isling. But we're kind of gonna use it to represent just the Norscan dwarf holds. These are holds that have remained very ancestral, but tapped into what we don't typically think of when we think ancestral dwarves. And that it's not that they're like refusing to use certain technologies they have available because of like haughtiness or pride, but because they developed technologically different than their southern cousins. And we've done a very big stream on the Norscan dwarves that you can go check out, which was super fun. Where we talked about why they didn't speak to the Southern dwarves for so long, because it makes no fucking sense that they would have talked. But these are dwarves that are actually very naval focused. They have a lot of subterranean waterways they use. They're really big into like big kind of Viking boat ships. Very, very skilled with bolt throwers, crossbows. They have their own unique form of slayer culture, which isn't nearly as kind of, they're not slayers, but the berserkers, which are seen as much less taboo, much more honorable and lively than the very shameful. Go watch our Norscan dwarf stream.
Yeah, go watch our Norscan dwarf stream. I mean, this one is super easy, and that is, it's the Viking dwarves of the north who are not part of the dwarven holds, properly speaking. They're on the outside. They're the ones who are doing their own thing up there. And if you're voting purely on this hold, it's been absolutely destroyed by chaos.
Yeah, this whole
they've just attempted to retake it. So this is an easy lower drop if you want a reason to drop this one down. If you want to vote for this one as representing the Northern Norse dwarves and you like them, though, very easy to place it somewhere else. The story around that hold was a bit messed up anyway. So feel free to drop this whenever you want. What do you think of Viking dwarfs? And I would also like to bring up one little comment here just while we're doing that one. Reminds me of how big London is compared to the rest of England or the UK. No, it doesn't. And I'll explain why. Typically with demographics, your primary city, whatever its population, has a secondary city that might be somewhere not that far from it, about half the population. England has that. We've got Birmingham, we've got Manchester, we've got lots of big cities. Where are our cities with 500, 600, 700,000 dwarves? 1 million dwarves, 2 million dwarves, if it's 5 million that are currently held in the capital. It's too much of a population spike in comparison to all of the rest. I recommend reading up on demographics because it'll give you a really strong idea. They actually are surprisingly consistent across all cultures in most of the world and how humans gather into different places. And it's super fascinating. Our answer could be they're dwarfs, not humans, so they gather differently.
Get your votes in. It's very close, so I don't want to end this one just yet. I'll give you all just a little bit longer. Get your votes in. Quick. It's between S and A. S and A are
super close between S and A as well.
Yeah, it's super close. Every vote counts,
like,
and not a lot of people voted yet. So, like,
yeah, totally. If you put one vote on there, you can literally swing it, and that one vote just came in and swung it and moved it.
Ricky Chapman, Zorn exists. We have seen it. All right, sure, Ricky Chapman. Sure, you have. Next one. El Dorado for dwarfs is just a hold filled with lady dwarfs, gold gems, and all the good beer you can drink. That does sound like heaven. It does sound like heaven. Karazakarak. Let's not go to Karazakarak. This is a silly place. All right, give y'all just a little bit longer. Okay, wow, a lot of the votes came in, swung it pretty solidly. One selection.
It really did, didn't it? Look at that.
5, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And it's a pretty heavy S. What do you think? Is that fair?
So, Al, I guess the question for you and me would be, I mean, personally, I would not put this one in S tier.
No, I wouldn't either.
But I don't know where I would put it in regards to Kadrin.
I probably put it above, but then I go, it's destroyed, so I put it below, and then I go, yeah, that sucks. Yeah, put it below. So I put it below.
Fair.
Yeah. So if I'm just rating the hold, then Krakadrak is an easy D.
Only Zarnagrid compares.
Nice one, Elijah. It's an easy D. The hold has fallen.
Already over time. So Zafar. Zupbar. Zupbar is
Zupbar.
fun. The Torrent Gate hold.
Torrent Gate.
So this is the Engineer Guild's hold. Like the Engineer Guild has their big setup in Zupbar, and Zupbar is a pretty interesting hold. It actually has a number of fun stories around it, particularly during the Vampire Wars and several things. Zupbar is a rather notorious hold in many ways because it actually has quite a few storylines where Zupbar gets surrounded. But unlike many dwarf holds, where getting surrounded by your enemies is like a horrible, terrible thing, for Zupbar, it's often framed as a good thing because for them, it's target practice. It is how they test all of their different engineering devices, is that they sit there with all their newfangled cannons and tech and start blasting away at all the greenskins and undead and all this nonsense that's surrounding them. And they have a pretty chill, laid back relationship towards being sieged compared to many of the other holds, to the extent where other holds have actually come to like relieve them. And Zupbar's response has been, "Aw, we were having fun. Why'd you do that?" They are a hold that the reason they're called the Torrent Gate often revolves around their greatest engineering marvel, which is that there's this great set of waterfalls around Zupbar, and the dwarves built these massive water wheels that the water pours onto, and they generate a staggering amount of power, like a crazy amount of power. And Zupbar uses all of that power to keep their forges, their furnaces, keeps a ton of stuff moving and operational. If there was ever going to be a dwarf hold that you could probably argue would have like surprisingly functioning literal electricity, it would be Zupbar. It is the hold that wields incredible amounts of power. Like these guys are into steam power. They're into like the power by wheels, pulleys and stuff. They're a hold that's been known to use things like oil in a lot of their strange constructions. They're building crazy massive machines. They're also prone for pumping out engineers, some of which are completely mad, and some of which have been disfigured. Quite a few disfigured engineers, actually, who did not learn their lesson fast enough and blew off their arm. In the case of a certain Burlock, what is Damonson? Not Damonson, his father.
I can't remember his father's name off the top of my head. Burlock Damonson?
Wait, Burlock Damonson is the father.
Is the father.
Is
Burlock
the father,
Damonson's
yes.
the dad.
Yes. So Burlock Damonson, who in Old World is super fun because we get him before the explosion, before he blows one of his arms off. But
although he's a pretty cool character with his arm off too.
Yes, he is. These dwarves are so sophisticated. Genuinely, their tech is so advanced that their what do you call it? Prosthetics are like they're sci-fi. They have sci-fi level prosthetics that are powered by like steam and all sorts of other strange technology. Zupbar is a wacky hold in like a fun way.
Yeah, Zupbar is a fun one. And it stands as a weird one for a variety of reasons, because it's one that sometimes gets dropped into undead conflicts because it's relatively close to Sylvania. It's one that often gets dropped into orc conflicts for pretty obvious reasons. Mount Gumba is just across the road. And you've also got the Fallen Hold just on the other side of Black Water, Carrick Varn. It's a bit of a mess around it. And so it's often having fights, but those fights are generally characterized as relatively one-sided, even when they're heavily besieged. And the city itself is generally touted as being one of the bigger ones in the Dwarf Kingdoms. Now, the numbers don't add up or make sense, because you'll get one book saying, oh, at its peak, it had, I don't know, like 250,000 people, or 300,000 people, whatever.
Making fun of me,
okay.
jerks.
Are they making fun of you, are they?
Yes, because I accidentally hit the poll too quickly. So instead of it being SABC, it was just yes or no.
Yes!
Nicely done. Mean to me.
Fucking hilarious. It's often described as golden age, as having a population of only about 120,000. Then in later books, it's got 240,000, far smaller than its golden age. The numbers are all over the place on this one. But loosely speaking, if we were to place it, it's about a third of the size of Karaz, which means it's actually fucking huge. This is one of the few cities inside the entirety of the Karak Ankor that makes sense alongside Karaz of Karak if you take the proportions rather than the actual numbers, as in about a third. That makes sense. And when you then combine it with its relatively unique story, which is basically they fly, they've got gyrocopters, they've got steampunk arms, they've got machines that can carry them around. They are the Engineer Guild Center. They are pretty freaking stupendous. There is a lot going on in Zufbar that the vast majority of the writers forget. They don't sit there and they don't say, oh, someone's come up and attacked Zufbar, and Zufbar blows them up with their crazy weapons. Instead, what happens is they have a normal siege and some normal cannons fire, and normal stuff happens because the writers don't bother to check the existing lore for Zufbar. And they go, oh, whoops. Zufbar is a pretty awesome location if you take all of its descriptions, but if you don't take them all, it's just a dwarf city like any other, which is a weird take. But I have seen that in more than one location when they'd say, ah, here's Zufbar. So what's happening here? Oh, it's just a dwarf hold, isn't it? The dwarves are trading with the Empire. Okay. Yeah, they're responsible for the dwarf road that goes all the way up towards the Middle Mountains, and they maintained it. Where's the engineering on the dwarf road then? What engineering? They're just dwarfs. What?
Yeah.
But they maintained the old dwarf road, okay, that and the Empire part of it, they maintained that all the way up through Talabheim, all the way up to Middenheim. They did all of that, and there's not a single engineering outpost. What the flying fuck is going on here? And their response is, well, what do you mean? Why would there be any engineering stuff? They're dwarfs. They don't. Empire does engineering stuff. They're the ones who make the mechanical
engineering
horses.
Hold. Come on.
And they're like, this is the engineering hold. There is, yet again, not just an untold story here. We have one where the writers genuinely have forgotten that this is the heart of the steampunk era of Warhammer. It's here. Everything that the Empire does is a sad, pale reflection to what the dwarves are capable of doing. But the dwarves control it extremely tightly. They don't innovate in the same way that humanity does. So humanity does crazy shit and everything blows up. Where the dwarves are refining and making it better and refining. And yes, they have legitimately cyberpunk arms, cyberpunk legs. They are capable of making prosthetics that are genuinely sci-fi. They are harking back to the Glittering Realm era of technology and capable of reproducing things that are quite bluntly impossible. And they're doing it without magic.
Of you that want a canonical steam tank for the dwarfs, Zufbar has it. They have a great tunneling engine that's mentioned, I think, in 7th edition. It's this like great machine they built that was designed to clear the underway, I believe, between Zufbar and Karak-Kadrin, and it succeeded. It just full on fucking succeeded.
It's so many lovely little lore drops that are being dropped in places, but no one's really done anything with it. Is our time done?
No. I was gonna say they do have a two little bad sides. They are on the edge of the Blackwater, which generally sucks.
It does.
Blackwater is a horrible place. Think of it as the equivalent, Lord of the Rings, the lake outside of Moria that has like the thing in the water. That's basically the Blackwater in a nutshell. It sucks. It's a terrible place. The other aspect
I just want to bring up that the runes are not a component of their technology. They can be. Their technology works without runes. They're the Engineers Guild. They're not the runic masters of the world. Well, they're using tech.
Yeah, their prosthetics. Their prosthetics actually rarely use runes.
Yeah, they can use runes, and they do have runes, runesmiths there, but they don't use runes for their core tech. Their core tech works without it.
Yeah, these are the dwarves that if you put in an art contest against elves, the elves would probably use magic to do it, and the dwarves will look over and be like, magic, and make something absolutely stupid that breaks the laws of physics, because dwarfs. And the other thing about Zufbar has had its ass handed to it a couple of times throughout history. They've had some bad times. They had a really bad time especially during Conrad von Karstein's era of the Vampire Wars. Their king was actually killed. Not by Conrad, but by Wallakarkin. Karkin fought him in a duel and killed him, which was horrible for the Zufbar dwarves. But that did piss them off enough that when Conrad was losing, they did help kill him. They were there was a hero from Zufbar who was the dwarf that held him when the electric out impaled him in the heart and killed him. And then they also showed up in force when Manfred returned and laid siege to Tempelhof, I believe, which was the night siege, where the vampire conjured a never-ending eternal dark, and the dwarves had to fight in pitch black darkness an entire siege, and they fucking won. Because Zufbar is kind of... I'm a little biased. I'm going to go ahead and call the poll there. I will say...
I think it's easy.
Yeah, Zufbar, honest to God, is my favorite hold, personally, because it's also led by fucking Batterden Stoneheart, and his novel is one of the best dwarf novels. It's an incredible novel. I think Zufbar goes right there. Like, I don't think it could beat the Capital, but it's the next best thing.
Yep, agreed. Easy. Yep, easy.
All right, I'm gonna get to our last few super chats because unfortunately we are hilariously over time.
Yeah, we're not too bad. It could be worse. It's only 15 minutes. Let's be honest. We've been 2 hours over time sometimes in the past.
Yeah, true. Quick question: why no Karak in the name of Zufbar? Because it's
not an everlasting realm.
Yeah, it's usually the term. Yeah, generally when you're dealing with the term Karak, that means you're built into a mountain specifically. Yep. Zufbar was founded around a set of waterfalls as its primary feature, which is very interesting and unique.
Yeah, I mean, Karak is basically mountain, and their word for enduring comes from exactly the same thing. So basically, is it enduring? Is it a mountain? Is it an everlasting thing? And the answer is no, they have not named it after that. They've named it after the waterfalls because they look fucking awesome.
Yeah, because for those that don't know, Zufbar, one of the reasons Zufbar has such a bad habit of being sieged is because a significant amount of the hold is exposed due to the fact that it runs on the waterfalls. Now, you can't get up that, though there was a time, I think it was Greenskins, managed to actually clog the water wheels. They either like seized it or like a bunch of them died and their bodies were clogging it up, and that actually almost destroyed the hold. No, it might have been Skaven. I think it was Skaven actually, because when the water wheels got jammed and they weren't turning anymore, the hold was in big fucking trouble. And then something happened and the dwarves managed to like clear it and they started turning again, and the dwarves just like immediately obliterated everybody. But it is a notable vulnerability of their hold. Justice for Zufbar. Give them a landmark CA, please. Oh, dude, I've been barking up that tree. I've been barking. It's literally my favorite hold. Which, to answer the super chat we had earlier, Andy, what is your favorite hold?
I'll do it after the super chats are done.
Okay, last one. Ricky Chapman. Zorn was horrific.
You've got one you missed. Oop. Let me just, I'll bring that one up.
Oh, yeah. Ted Barrera. Hi, elves go to Karaz and Karak and kindly ask, can we have the Phoenix crowd back after all these centuries? Dwarfs. No. Except for they probably wouldn't laugh. I don't think they would. Genuinely, I don't think the dwarves would find it funny. They'd probably find it insulting the elves even asked. But they have asked. There has been notes that the elves have repeatedly asked for it back. In exchange for like all sorts of riches, or after they like saved dwarves one time or whatever, and the dwarves are always like, nah. Nah. All right, then to Ricky Chapman's last super chat. Karak Zorn was a horrific in our campaign, like Hell Pit, but cleaner and more advanced underneath, with the remains of the old one's development of the Dawi. That sounds cool.
Yeah, that sounds fun. Art. So, to conclude, you've rated the holds, and you have placed Karaz Karak at the top, and Karak Zorn, the undisputed city of gold, at the bottom. In between, you've got all the other holds, some of which I strongly agree with. One or two, I think you're a bit generous. But this generosity is not exactly unexpected. Like, for example, Karak Kadrin. Everybody loves Karak Kadrin. It's a cool place. But the question is, the one we were going to end on, what was my favorite hold out of all those? And my one's D-rated. It has always been Karak 8 Peaks. Karak 8 Peaks, to me, is freaking awesome. Even the story of trying to retake it all going wrong is awesome. I have always liked Karak 8 Peaks and the adventure and the story opportunities that it provides. I can't help but love it. That doesn't mean I change its rating. It stays a D, but that doesn't mean it's not my favorite, because this isn't a listing of my favorite holds. This is a rating of the Dawi holds and how they compare to each other. And it doesn't compare at all favorably with the others in the slightest, but nevertheless has always been a favorite of mine. Many an adventure has been had down there with me in various campaigns in the past, but I haven't visited it for about 25 years in any of my games. So maybe I'm due to pop by Caracate Peaks one more time.
God, I can't imagine how I love your GMing style, but I cannot imagine how fucking terrifying Caracate Peaks would be an anti-long campaign.
It would be bad, eh?
Like, you literally just get sniped at any moment by some fucking Skaven or Night Goblin. Just, oh man, I would be so stressed out the entire time. All right, that brings us to the end of today's show. Just want to thank you all so much for joining us. We really appreciate the support. We really appreciate the support.
Really did. That was amazing. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, we will, of course, be back on Sunday for me and Andy, but tomorrow, depending on weather, we'll be having another episode of 40K Lorebeards where, but lobbies and stuff will be going up for everything else coming over the next week or so. Of course, we've got 40K Lorebeards on Saturday as well. If you haven't seen, there are a couple of polls up on the channel. Please do consider checking those out. We have the poll for the next book club. We also have the poll for I believe the January 3rd or something like that episode of 40K Lorebeards. So they're officially at the point where y'all can vote for the topics. So be sure to check those out. Me and Andy will have polls going up soon, though. There's a couple of like particular ones we're kind of wanting to really make sure we get done. But just want to thank you all again so much. And I do have a favor to ask of all of y'all.
Favor time.
Yeah, as soon as this ends, y'all are going to be redirected to go hang out with Vera Samela, who runs the book club, along with Lindsay Law, and she is attempting to go for Twitch partner, which is a very nerve-wracking experience for anyone that ever streams on Twitch, because it's this whole application process and it's very spooky and yada 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 yada. So for any of you that happen to be watching on Twitch, I'll just rage all there. But for anyone of you that happen to be watching on YouTube, while we also will send you to her YouTube thing, we would really appreciate it if you would consider going to her Twitch page to support her there. Just hang out, chat a little bit. Hang out for a while. She's doing all sorts of fun stuff. Is there Lawhammer news? Are y'all on this week?
We are not on this week. We are done for the year. We had our Christmas episode. The Christmas episode goes up next Monday because our last episode didn't go up in time, so we've got a whole extra bit of time to pop an episode up. So that one will be going up, and it was at the end of the episode, a thing finally happened that we've been waiting 77 episodes to occur.
I can't wait to get caught up.
It happened. So that was a perfect place to finish for Christmas. We're going to be doing some side episodes though, so we're going to be getting a couple of those up hopefully over the Christmas and festive period.
Excellent. Well, thank you all again so much for joining us. I will put our finished version of the tier list up on socials, the Lorebeard socials, as well as a link so you can make your own. So you can let us know how you personally would rate all the holds, because we'd love to see that and y'all argue amongst each other. Once again, I'm going to send y'all to say hi to Vera. Please do. And if they, please support her and give her our love, because we got to bounce. So
go say thanks to her for just being awesome.
Yeah, thank you all so much for watching. We'll see y'all next time.
Until then, bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Bye, guys.